Hi, Animescar here. This is the ultimate anime action recap with big twists and insane fights. Let's dive in. Rick was just your average dude in a freaking fantasy world packed with magic and crazy adventures. But let me tell, his life wasn't all that exciting. While most dudes his age would join some adventurers guild to embark on dangerous quests, battling monsters and raking in the gold and glory, Rick ended up stuck in a lame 9-to-5 job with no prospects or girlfriend, just like you. After slaving away at the same company for years, he finally said, "Screw this," and tossed his resignation right in his boss's face. So, after 2 years of hardcore training with some badass senior adventurers, he goes back to the guild to take their entrance exam. The reception Alyssa, his former co-worker and junior, she's totally shocked to see him ditch his old life at the ripe old age of 30 and choose the adventure path. While they're chatting, some old drunk dude stumbles over and starts hitting on Alyssa. She shuts him down, but this jerkwad decides to get physical, grabbing her arm and telling her to shut up and listen like a good little lady. That's when Rick steps in cool as a cucumber and tells the guy to back the hell off, grabbing him by the gut. Next thing you know, the dude starts foaming at the mouth and gets knocked the EFF out. Everyone's freaking surprised, but Rick just brushes it off, saying it's probably because the guy had too many drinks. So Rick gets his admit card and heads outside, where he bumps into this smoking hot chick named Rhea. She asks if everything went well, and Rick's feeling pretty good about himself. Meanwhile, inside the guild, people notice a handprint embedded into the metal armor of that Tate fan dude. Shit gets real when some FBI agents show up, claiming the guy's name is Doe, a former rank adventurer with assault charges. Alyssa realizes that Rick must have knocked his sorry ass out and starts giggling like crazy. Rick heads into the exam center, and folks are shocked to find out he's 32 years old. They all line up to touch this examiner's ball thingy that measures their magic. But when Rick steps up, the damn thing doesn't show a damn thing. The examiner gives him an F, and poor Rick walks away feeling like crap. The other peeps start making fun of him when all of a sudden, the ball cracks. So he's taken to another room where they measure their attack power by smacking a slime bag. Rick remembers how one of his meathead seniors effortlessly destroyed a golden slime bag, and now he's wondering if he can even come close. As everyone takes their turns, this 11-year-old whiz kid steps up. He's known as a prodigy and can already rock C-class magic at his age. The kid pulls off some fancy moves and then unleashes this tiny-ass fireball, blowing everyone's minds. They all think he's some sort of genius. Rick remembers when one of his younger peers pulled off this insane move, conjuring a fireball that legit looked like the freaking sun and chucked it at him. He barely dodged that thing. Then a bunch of other contestants took their shots at the slime bag. Finally, it's Rick's turn. He steps up to the stage, but this old man tells him to just give up because he wouldn't see much growth at the age of 32. But Rick recalls how he trained his ass off, pounding that golden slime bag until his hands were freaking bleeding. His senior told him he needed to hit it another 500,000 times to build some basic strength. And that's when Rick made up his mind he ain't never gonna give up. So he goes all in and throws a punch at that bag. That thing straight up explodes and goes flying out of the exam hall, shocking the hell out of everyone. Rick's even confused himself and thinks maybe the bag was just a dud. He considers himself pretty damn lucky. Next up is the defensive magic round, where the instructor hits him with some third-class magic. But Rick ain't even fazed. He stands there with a big old grin on his face. The instructor commends him and asks whether he used second-class defense magic. But Rick surprises him by saying he was using 5th-class magic, which is supposed to be the shittiest. The instructor thinks he's messing around and tells him to get serious because he's gonna hit him with some first-class magic. He suggests Rick use a first-class defense too. But Rick shocks him again by saying he only knows how to use 5th-class magic. The instructor is completely rattled, but he goes ahead and casts the magic, creating this huge explosion. Rick ain't got a single scratch on him. All the noise catches the attention of a high-ranking knight named Syl, who walks in and asks what the hell's happening because that explosion was way louder than it should have been. When the attendant fills him in on Rick and his crazy feats, Syl's surprised as hell. After that, Rick finishes up his written exam and steps out of the center, feeling relieved as hell. Rhea tells him not to stress because he's busted his ass for the past 2 years. But Rick still thinks he messed up the practical part. And out of nowhere, this kid named Freed, the prodigy, comes up to him and starts yelling about how Rick stole the spotlight. Rick's hella is confused. But then Freed starts bawling his eyes out, and this girl walks up and hugs him. She introduces herself as Angelica, Freed's sister, and says that this 40-year-old dude bullied him. Rick shouts that he is still 32, but Angelica starts clowning on him, calling him a washed-up loser and says he needs to be punished. She throws a glove at his feet and tells him to fight her. Now Rick ain't looking for a fight, so he just picks up the glove because it's getting all dirty on the ground. But then Rhea drops the bombshell on him, saying that picking up the glove means he's accepting the damn duel. Ain't no backing out now. So they both step into the stadium, and Rick finds out she's a second-class knight, which is like a badass B-rank adventurer. He starts freaking out, thinking he ain't got a chance in hell. But Rhea tells him to remember all the training he's been through these past years, and that brings back memories of how messed up his seniors were. He starts puking his guts out, but weirdly enough, it makes him feel better. Compared to those assholes, this girl ain't nothing. Rhea tries to boost his confidence, reminding him that he's part of the strongest party in the whole damn kingdom. That gives him a little courage, and he gets ready while that arrogant girl takes her stance and gathers her magic, ready to go full throttle at Rick with lightning speed. Rick dodges her without even thinking, while she's all like, what the hell? Did I miss it? Turns out she used a slower version of her attack. Then this young brat from the sidelines shouts that his sister is called Angelica, the light speed queen, because she's the fastest in the entire kingdom. She gears up for another attack, zooming toward Rick like a freaking bullet. But Rick's hella surprised because in his eyes, she's moving at a snail's pace. He starts wondering if she's messing with him, and at the last moment, he casually steps aside. This time, Angelica is surprised as she wonders whether it was a coincidence because only some hardcore adventurers can dodge her attacks. She gathers herself and charges at him again with all her conviction, unleashing her lightning fast strike. But once again, Rick's like, no, I can run faster than this. He starts wondering if Angelica got her night gig through connections or if she's really that weak, all these thoughts running through his head. Then, out of nowhere, Angelica trips over a damn rock and starts spinning like crazy. Rick's scared shitless, trying to dodge her sword that's flailing around like a maniac. The sword ends up getting stuck in the wall, and Rick's like, damn, this must be some next level move I ain't heard of. He feels dumb for thinking he was all strong and shit. Angelica gets up again and decides to use her blink step at lightning speed, like 3 times faster than before. But to Rick, it still looks like slow motion and he easily dodges it. She tries that move 2 more times, but ends up tripping again and comes at him from a lower angle. Rick tries to intercept with a punch, but she slips right through. Rick with his punch creates a damn massive crater, scaring the crap out of the girl. He steps forward and tells her she's really strong, so he's going to give it his all too. But Angelica's so damn scared, she immediately throws in the towel and runs off. Rick's confused as hell, but Rhea tells him that the exam results are about to be announced, and his seniors are on their way too. That scares the shit out of Rick because he has no clue what those bastards will do if he fails the test. Rick and Rhea, let's bounce back to the exam spot for now. They say the results gonna drop real soon through their exam tickets. If you pass, your ticket's gonna light up blue, and you can move on to the next stage. But anything else means you flunked. Rick's all stressed out, thinking he might have failed the exam. So Rhea tries to calm him down, telling him he did great. Rick thinks Rhea's cool as hell for trying to boost his spirits, and if he was 10 years younger, he'd totally put a ring on her finger. But she's got a scary side too, warning him that she'll triple his training if he fails somehow. Right then, Rick's card starts glowing. He grabs it, full of anticipation, and damn, he's stoked to find out he nailed the first exam. He dips out of the hall with Rhea, but as he steps outside, this awful stench hits his nose. He looks over and sees this rich dude strutting up to Rhea, introducing himself as the top dog of the Diamuit family, Raster Diamuit. Rick's already dealt with 2 Diamuit family members before, but this time Raster ain't here for Rick. He's here to make a move on Rhea. Rick tries to introduce himself, but Raster ain't interested in some middle-aged musclehead. He goes back to chatting up Rhea and straight up tells her he's head over heels for her, mistaking her jugs for her personality, and wants her to be his second wife. That's when Rick puts his foot down. He can't let Rhea slip away to a guy like Raster. So he steps in front of her and claims she's his girl, shutting down Raster's advances. Raster looks down and sees Rick's holding an exam card, meaning he must still be a low-ranking loser. And he finds it hilarious that someone as old as Rick is at the bottom of the barrel. Rick tries to defend himself, saying Raster's too damn old to be taking the exam too, looking like he's at least 25. But Raster just laughs it off and tells Rick he ain't here as a candidate. He already aced this test when he was just 14. So he's actually an A-rank adventurer, and here as an instructor for the second part of the exam. Thinking he's won this round, Raster turns back to Rhea and asks her to join him for dinner. But Rhea shuts him down, saying the only man she's rolling with is Rick, especially after the insane amount of cologne Raster sprayed all over himself. Raster's fuming, can't handle the fact that he didn't bag Rhea. So he swears that if he ends up in charge of Rick's exam, he's gonna make sure Rick suffers big time, and that Rhea falls for him. After Raster storms off, Rick prays he won't have to deal with him during the exam, but then he notices Rhea still holding on to him, and he jumps back in embarrassment. He apologizes to her for claiming she's his girl out of nowhere, but Rhea tells him there's no need to be sorry because he did it to fend off Raster, and it made her really happy. Meanwhile, Raster's boiling with rage because he couldn't make Rhea his second wife and lost her to a middle-aged dude, of all people. Just then, his 2 siblings come running up to him. Freed's griping about some old man messing with him during the exam, while Angelica's whining about losing a duel to the same old man who wanted her as his servant. So Raster, that dude from the Diamuit family, is all pissed because someone dissed his family, but when he finds out it's Rick, He gets this evil grin because now he's got an excuse for payback. Fast forward, and the mock battles are about to start. Rick's mad nervous. Rhea tells him to hold back during the exam, but Rick's confused. He thinks he's weak, so why would he hold back against stronger peeps? Plus, he's still worried about Raster being in charge of his test. Just then, they bump into this dude called Lynx, who's gonna be Rick's examiner. Rick's stoked because that's one less thing to stress about. Lynx says he's surprised Rick wants to become an adventurer at his age, but he ain't hating. He finds it inspiring that Rick's still chasing his dreams. Lynx became an adventurer at 24. But for the past 20 years, he's been stuck at B rank. He wants to reach a rank, so Rick's dedication motivates him. He's ready to test Rick in the mock battle. Now here comes Raster, lurking with some shady plan. Rick and Rhea are chilling in the locker room, and Rick's feeling way better because he's got Lynx as his instructor. But they're told Lynx mysteriously got sick and Raster's taking over. Rick freaks out. Rhea figures Raster pulled some shady moves, and since he's related to Angelica and Freed, he's probably got a grudge against Rick. Other examinees in the room start talking about how messed up it is to have Raster as an instructor. He loves beating up F-rank adventurers every year. He targets one unlucky adventurer and does everything to make them fail. That's bad news for Rick because Raster hates his guts right now. Meanwhile, Raster's outside messing with some random examinee, blasting him with ice and talking trash. But his fun gets interrupted by a message from the elite guard. Back inside, Rick's pacing because it's almost his turn. He's sweating how he's gonna handle Raster. Rhea don't get why he's so worked up. Just has to beat Raster. However, Rick thinks beating Raster is impossible. Raster's a respected A-rank adventurer. While Rick's stuck at F rank, he thinks he'll straight up die if he faces Raster. But if he backs out, he'll be stuck with triple the training. Rhea steps up to Rick and straight up asks if he's got zero confidence in his skills. Rick genuinely thinks he's a garbage adventurer because he switched to this job too late in life. Everyone's always telling him he's too damn old for it. But Rhea shuts that noise down and tells him not to let other peeps' opinions shake his confidence. All that matters is that she believes in him. Even if Rick can't believe in himself, she wants him to trust her judgment when she says he can win. Rick appreciates her kind words and starts feeling way more confident. Right then, this mysterious cloaked boy rolls up to Rick and offers him some free fortune telling. He's all like no shady stuff. Even though it seems hella sketchy, Rick decides to give it a shot. But just as Rick's about to sit down, Rhea peeps a magic circle on the chair. She tries to warn Rick that it's a trap, but she's too late. Rick gets teleported away in a hot second. Turns out, the boy was none other than Freed, and he's feeling pretty damn pleased with himself for tricking Rick into falling for his trap. But he should have thought about teleporting him out of there because Rhea's furious. She grabs Freed by the collar and blows a hole through the wall. She demands to know where Rick got teleported to, but Freed initially refuses to spill the beans. After some not-so-consensual eyelash trimming and the threat of an eye poke, Freed spills the beans. His teleportation magic only sends someone 100 meters max, so Rick's still nearby. Meanwhile, Rick finds himself by the river behind the training center, feeling hella confused about how he ended up there. Suddenly, the elite guard shows up and tells Rick they've been ordered to beat him. These peeps are part of the Diamute family's elite guard, so Rick figures Raster and the crew are behind this mess. They don't want Raster to get his hands dirty, so they're trying to sabotage Rick's chances in the exam. Rick calls them out for being shameless, trying to mess with him so he misses his exam. But the leader corrects him and says this is a coordinated ambush by the elite guard. They got some B and A-rank adventurers on their side, making Rick feel completely outmatched. He's stuck trying to figure out what the hell to do when he spots some peeps standing on the ledge nearby. And when he takes a closer look, he realizes it's his senior party members. They scare the crap out of him even more than the elite guard. His party members jump down and ask why the hell he's there instead of taking his exam. So, fearing for the elite guard's lives, Rick makes up a lie saying they were just helping him get ready. Brufston even offers to join them if they're training. But Rick knows well how brutal training with Brufston is. He tries to warn the elite guard leader to get their crew out of there before they end up dead. The leader ain't taking him seriously and straight up tells his crew to take out Brufston. But as one of them tries to swing at Brufston's head, the damn sword shatters to pieces, and Brufston just stands there like a stone. He gives props to the dude for getting his body strong, but he's disappointed that he couldn't fortify his weapon enough to keep it from breaking. The guy gets all angry and decides to throw some punches, but you already know that doesn't end well. Brufston just grabs his hand and squeezes it till it turns purple. But don't trip. Brufston lets him know he's got healing magic to fix up his messed up hand. The leader of the elite guard is finally starting to realize he screwed up big time by picking a fight with these guys. He's finally getting how powerful they truly are. While all that's going down, Mizette asks Rick if the elite guard is really there to start some drama with him. Rick confirms it, so Mizette says he'll handle it peaceably. Then he pulls out a badass super fire barrel MK3 rifle and starts blasting anyone in range, leaving them all lying limp on the ground. Rick flips out. yelling at him for straight up killing everyone when he said he'd resolve things peacefully. But Mizette insists that none of them are actually dead yet. Some fool probably tries to take a Lycer hostage to gain the upper hand. But he has no clue how badly he just screwed up. Even Brufston warns him to back the hell away from her if he wants to live. But the guy don't listen and smacks a Lycer to shut her up. Well, that sealed his fate because a Lycer straight up vaporizes him. The other elite guard members can't believe what just went down, but the leader finally gets it. So he tells them that the vampire girl, a Lycerette Drakwall, is a prodigy, the world's strongest mage at just 10 years old. Mizette Eldwarf, the world's finest weapon craftsman, a dwarf so damn skilled he makes tech nobody's ever seen before. And Brufston, he's an orc with insane strength and wisdom. They're all S-rank adventurers, meaning they got strength that defies common sense. Plus, they're part of a party made up entirely of S-rank adventurers, the Chalum Fist. The leader never thought he'd get to see such powerful peeps up close. Now that he has, he decides to do the smart thing and retire from the elite guard, effective immediately. The other fools who didn't quit got a deal with a Lycer. So Rick tries his best to ignore the screams of pain and focus on his exam. Rick reunites with Rhea after she's taken care of Freed, and they find Lynx all messed up from earlier. Raster had cornered Lynx and asked him about his dreams. When Lynx said he wanted to build a school for the kids in his village, Raster straight up said, "Ignore those kids," and beat the crap out of Lynx for having the audacity to dream. Raster did all that just to get to Rick. Rick is beyond furious about it. He was scared before, but now he's filled with nothing but determination to smash Raster. While Raster was straight up clowning on those poor newbies in the yard, this dude chilling on the benches above was peeping the whole scene, cracking up. Turns out, this dude is Adolf, but thankfully not repping Germany. Homeboy's got this crazy gift where he can peep someone's vibe and figure out what they're packing in terms of skills. We're talking about 4 main flavors here: brute strength, magical mojo, speed, and agility. Dude's vibing hard as he sizes up each player that steps to Raster, predicting how badly they're gonna get wrecked. Then this one trainee strolls in, looking all average Joe, and bam, Raster blasts him with lightning magic, sending Adolf into a fit of giggles. So, Adolf decides to check out Raster's own stats, and no surprises there Raster's packing some serious magic, the kind only top-tier players roll with. Just a quick glance at Raster makes Adolf's eyes sting from the sheer power emanating from him. And then, out of the blue, Rick steps up to face Raster. But Adolf barely even clocks Rick, wondering why this old-timer is even trying to be an adventurer at his age. Still, he peeps Rick's stats. Turns out Rick's maxed out in every category except magic. Just a glance at Rick's stats makes Adolf's eyes feel like they're on fire, dropping him to the floor in pain. Meanwhile, over on the other side of the arena, Rhea spots Alyssa rolling up to catch Rick's final test, so she invites her to join the crew. At first, Alyssa's shook to see an orc chilling there, but Rhea reassures her and they all kick it. The orc asks Rhea what she's thinking about Rick, and without missing a beat, she says Rick's gonna ace this exam easily. Alyssa, clueless about Rick's skills, doubts his abilities, thinking Raster the big shot, crushes newbies with his top-notch magic. Brufston gets antsy until he finds out Raster's an ranking adventurer. Then he relaxes, saying it shouldn't be a problem for Rick in the heat of battle. Raster gives Rick props for taking down his guards, but warns him not to get too full of himself, noting the guards were just regular folks, while he's in a ranking prodigy and a duke from the Northern Kingdom. Rick asks why Raster went down the adventurer path, and the cocky dude says he's a brainiac and figured adding a ranking adventurer to his resume would up his noble family's status. But truth be told, Raster disrespects adventurers entirely, seeing them all as commoners. The fight kicks off, and Raster immediately fires an ice blast at Rick, who stands firm as it whizzes past him. Raster laughs, thinking he's messing with Rick, trying to scare him. Meanwhile, Rick works on keeping his cool, remembering Rhea's advice to stay composed and analyze his opponent. Initially, Raster thinks Rick's frozen in fear, so he aims to end the battle fast. He unleashes his super strong flame magic, blasting Rick with it. But to everyone's surprise, Rick emerges untouched by the flames, not a scratch on him. Alice's mind is blown, but Brufston assures her that a weak attack like that won't even tickle Rick. He drops some knowledge, explaining that magic skills max out at 20, and since Rick started at 30, his mana pool is stuck tiny. That's why Brufston focused on toughening Rick up physically, starting with strapping him with 100 kilograms ankle weights and making him sprint through a forest infested with demon snakes. Back at the battle scene, Raster pulls out the big guns, hitting Rick with a powerful wind spell, unleashing slicing winds at him. But Rick stands firm, not budging an inch. Raster, getting a bit heated, zaps him with lightning, but Rick takes it like a boss. Alysa's totally puzzled, so Rhea spills the beans Rick's as strong as an S-ranked adventurer now, but doesn't even know it. When Brufston was training him, he'd fib that even an F-ranked adventurer could outshine him, all while Rick was smashing boulders with his bare fists. Inside the arena, Raster loses it, unleashing a barrage of earth, lightning, fire, water, and wind magic at Rick all at once. He's dead certain the old man is toast this time. But as the dust settles, Rick emerges, breaking a giant boulder in half. Raster's jaw hits the floor at Rick's resilience, prompting him to take matters into his own hands. He be using magic to amp up his bod and turns his fist harder than steel as he zooms at Rick wicked fast. Rick, though, ain't moving an inch and just tosses a lazy punch, smacking Raster's punch head on, sending him flying back. Dude gets his act together and lands on his feet, looking all puzzled at how this guy be tanking his hits. Rick decides he's seen enough and figures out that even though Raster is sitting on a load of mana, he never really put in the sweat because everything came easy for him. Every move this noble dude makes be rough and weak. This pumps Rick up big time because he knows there ain't no way he losing to this hot mess of a guy. While Freed and Angelica are waiting for Rick to lose, Raster finally gets real and busts out the strongest fire magic he got. But even after going all out, Rick casually blocks Raster's fire blast with just his hand. Raster rushes in for a sneak attack, but Rick ain't falling for it and counters quick. Thankfully, Raster manages to toughen up his body like steel, saving himself from getting wrecked. He brushes off the dirt, but still won't admit Rick's skills, calling it all luck. This ticks Rick off as he recalls all the crazy training he'd been through, like surviving in a dragon's nest, dodging explosions, and even swimming in deadly waters. Mizette recalls how he straight up shoved him off a cliff, a Lycer squashed him under a big rock, and how he took a beating from falling logs while sparring with Rhea. Lucky for him, Brufston's got this crazy healing magic that can bring a dude back if he recently bit the dust, and that's how Rick managed to push himself to the limit in the arena. Raster uses his earth magic to tie Rick up with these super strong roots, chanting some long spell that wraps a bunch of roots around him, trapping him. Then, he merges Rick with this tree golem, warning him it's game over, and to start saying his prayers because he ain't walking out of this arena alive. Rick pulls off a quick air shot, a basic move in this world, but he's confident because he's practiced it a million times. He busts out of the roots just as Raster swoops in with a magical punch. Rick throws a punch of his own, and they clash at the center of the arena, sending shockwaves everywhere. Raster was all cocky at first, but Rick's air shot totally outguns his magic, blowing up the tree golem and knocking Raster out cold, leaving everyone in the stands dumbfounded that the top dog just got taken down so easily. After the fight, Rick links up with his crew who pat him on the back for passing the test. Before they can grab a bite, Raster shows up with his crew. He tells Rick he'll be the examiner next time Rick's up for promotion and vows to take him down before strutting off. Later, the results for the successful adventurers are announced, and while the rest are partying at the tavern, Rick and Rhea are on edge, waiting for his name to be called, wondering what kind of adventures lie ahead. Rick's reminiscing about this time back when he was a kid, reading this book about some hero battling Kaiser Alcipiad, the big bad monster, just to snag those Akashic records. But that hero didn't come through, so he left those records for the next-gen adventurers to stumble upon. That's when it hit Rick that he wanted in on that adventurer's life, just like the one in his storybook. But his mom wasn't vibing with that idea because she knew that job was risky. She tells him have to pick a safer hustle, but Pops wasn't feeling it either. He straight up told Rick to clock in at a 9 to 5 before chasing after some adventure fantasy. One day, at a checkup, the doctor gives Rick props, talking about how he's got this natural talent. Rick doesn't believe that, because having a natural talent is rare AF, kind of like being Yamato the hero. Doc drops truth bombs, saying that natural skills ain't something you can just hustle into existence. It's gonna take time for Rick to unlock his power. But Rick's still cheesing hard, feeling like he's one step closer to proving himself as a top-tier adventurer to his folks. The next day, Rick's all hyped, telling his crew about this natural talent he's packing and how it's gonna be lit once he flexes it. But days turn to weeks, weeks to months, and before you know it, Rick's facing the harsh reality that his talent might be a no-show. His crew's there for him, pushing him to chase that adventurer life regardless, because most adventurers ain't born with superpowers anyway, and adventurers stack that paper, so it ain't a bad hustle. But Rick ain't in it for the cash. He's trying to be like Yamato, the hero. When he realizes he can't be that type of adventurer, he decides to clock in at a regular job. Rick breaks the news to his folks, and they're stoked that he's giving up on his dreams to embrace the grind like a regular Joe. Time flies, and Rick learns the ropes at his desk job. Watching other adventurers living out his dream, slowly but surely, he gets used to the daily grind until he's cool with his average life, cherishing the moments with his crew and family. One day, while flipping through his old books, Rick stumbles upon that storybook about Yamato's legendary adventures. Seeing it now, it's just an old fairy tale he used to believe in, nothing more. The next day at work, Alyssa, who just got hired, is struggling with all the paperwork. Rick notices and goes over to help her out, reminding her to take her time and not rush the learning process since she'll get the hang of it eventually. He also mentions that monsters have been getting more active around town, so a quest to take them down will probably come up soon. Alyssa is super thankful for the heads up because now she can get the forms ready ahead of time. As Alyssa leaves to handle the paperwork, one of Rick's adventurer buddies walks in with something to show him. He just got back from his promotion exam and is proud to say he is now officially a B rank adventurer. Rick's happy for his friend, but deep down, he can't help but feel a pang of jealousy seeing someone live out his dream of being an adventurer. To deal with the jealousy, Rick does what any responsible adult would do: drinks late into the night to make the pain go away. But even in his drunken state, the difference between him and Zaid is crystal clear. Zaid has been promoted up to B rank and is living Rick's dream, while Rick has been stuck in the same chair for 14 years with nothing to show for it but a stable income and a few annual pay raises. It's not like he thinks he wasted his life, but he can't help but wonder how far he could have gone if he chose to become an adventurer back then. Just then, Rick hears a commotion in the middle of town and goes to check it out, hoping he can help. What he sees worries him: a mid-rank hand troll in the city. Under normal circumstances, as soon as Rick saw that thing, he would have run away, but he notices a woman walking right into the troll's path, and he can't just stand by while someone gets hurt. So, he runs out in front of the woman, trying to protect her from the troll, even though he knows he can't do much to hold it back. As the monster closes in on them, Rick braces himself for a gruesome death. But before that could happen, Rhea steps out in front of Rick and slashes the monster to pieces. She then tells Rick that she appreciates him trying to protect her, but there's no need to worry about her since she is a skilled adventurer. After that, Rick and Rhea walked together and introduced themselves. Rick was super impressed with how strong Rhea was back there and asked if she was a B rank adventurer. Rhea said she wasn't, so Rick assumed she must be a rank. He was amazed since it's rare to meet a rank adventurer in town, but Rhea corrected him again, saying she wasn't in a rank either. Then, she pulled out her S rank badge to prove her rank, and Rick was totally shocked. S rank adventurers are crazy powerful and super rare, and this was his first time meeting one. There are even rumors that HQ keeps them off local guild registers and directly oversees their missions. He couldn't believe he was meeting such a legendary adventurer. Since she was there, he said he had a weird question and pleaded with Rhea not to laugh at him. Rhea assured him she hadn't laughed once in the 9 years since her 8th birthday. Though Rick wasn't sure if that was something to be proud of, but Rick feels sorry for her. Moving on, Rick told Rhea about his childhood dream of becoming an adventurer and defeating Kaiser Alcipiat. He wanted to know if she thought he could still achieve his dream if he started becoming an adventurer today, even though he's already 30. After seeing how Rick acted when he thought she was in danger, Rhea was sure he had the courage needed to be an adventurer, but she warned him about the importance of mana reserves. Rick said he knew that developing mana reserves is tough unless you start young. Rhea added that it's practically impossible to build your mana reserves once you're older, given how crucial mana reserves are for adventurers. Rhea had to be honest and said she didn't think Rick could make it as an adventurer if he started now. Rick expected that answer but still felt hurt hearing it. At least he found some closure in the fact that an S-rank adventurer told him. So, there was nothing left to do but give up on his dreams and settle into an ordinary life. Rhea apologized if she made Rick feel bad, but he said it was fine and appreciated her honesty. Plus, it's not every day you meet a lady as pretty as her. So he invited her to grab a meal sometime. Though he was joking, Rhea immediately agreed and offered to meet him tomorrow for their date. The next day, Rick was in a really good mood and wanted to work even harder than usual. When Zaid rolls in bragging about his new B-rank status, Rick doesn't even flinch, wishing him luck on his next quest. By the end of the day, Rick's happily skipping down the road to meet up with Rhea, kind of hoping they might start dating if things go well. But then he hears people screaming about a monster attack, so his date plans get wrecked. Since Rhea was supposed to meet him nearby, Rick figures she's already fighting the monsters, so he rushes over to check on her. Rhea's holding her own, but there are a ton of monsters coming. She tells Rick to stand back while she handles it, and he lets her do her thing. Moments later, the battlefield's covered in monster bits, and Rhea looks like she's just getting started. But suddenly, she senses something that triggers flashbacks to losing everyone she loved, and the trauma drops her to her knees. A monster shows up right when Rhea's having a panic attack, and Rick's not ready to defend her. But luckily, Zaid jumps in at the last second and saves them both. Rick's thankful but confused about why Zaid's here. Then, 2 other adventurers show up to help, and Zaid tells Rick the guild put out an emergency quest to take down these monsters, so they all rush over. Since they're here now, Rick should get his date to safety while they handle the rest of the monsters. While the adventurers are fighting, Rick realizes he's still just as jealous of them as ever. After Rhea gets it together, she warns Rick that it's dangerous for him to be there. Rick tries to reassure her that the B-rank adventurers can handle the rest, but Rhea says they won't be strong enough for what's coming. She tells Rick there's a dragon nearby, and she can't fight it because of trauma that makes her lose control of her magic whenever she senses a dragon. Rick doesn't believe a dragon would show up here, but then something flies overhead, and as Rick looks up, he sees the dragon Rhea was talking about. It makes no sense for a dragon to be in a human town. According to the guild's rules, if an adventurer lower than a rank encounters a dragon, the only thing they can do is stand still and pray the dragon leaves. and no matter what, no one should attack the dragon first. But the magician freaks out and does exactly what they're not supposed to do, leading to the whole B rank group getting wiped out. There's no way any of them can fight the dragon, so Zaid tells everyone to make a run for it. But as they try to escape, they find themselves trapped in a barrier the dragon put up. Looks like the dragon doesn't intend to let any of them leave alive, and they stand no chance against it. But Rick starts walking straight up to the dragon. Zaid tells him to stop since there's nothing he can do as a receptionist. But Rick figures if he's gonna die anyway, he might as well face death head on like an adventurer. Rick thought he'd feel better if he gave up on his dream of being an adventurer. But he still feels the fire inside pushing him towards that goal. He picks up a rock and throws it at the dragon, and it does absolutely nothing. But Rick's bravery motivates the other adventurers to give it their all too. Even though they know they'll lose, they start throwing everything they've got at the dragon. It doesn't do much except provoke the dragon into using its fire breath. Zaid realizes this is gonna be bad, so he uses his iron body skill to protect everyone. They survive, but they're still pretty banged up. From the flaming rubble, Rick gets up and walks straight over to the dragon, claiming he'll make his dream come true no matter what. The dragon tries to squish Rick with its foot, but on the verge of death, Rick's dormant innate skill awakens. It gives him the power to survive being stepped on and push the dragon away with ease. The magic flowing from his body is so potent that it's visible, and Rick realizes this must be his innate skill. He wishes it had awakened earlier, but better late than never. Now that he has the power to fight back, Rick feels a lot more confident facing the dragon. As it fires another blast at him, he stretches out his hand and blocks the fire with his magical energy. When he gets the chance to counterattack, Rick unleashes a punch that carves a hole straight through the dragon's body, killing it instantly. Once it's all over, Rick goes back to normal and collapses to the ground. When he wakes up, he's in a hospital bed and in great physical pain. Rhea is there and informs Rick that he overloaded every single magic circuit in his body during the fight with the dragon. So by all accounts, he should already be dead. He's been unconscious for about a week, and Rhea has been waiting by his bedside because she wants to personally invite Rick to join the party she's a part of, Orichalcum Fist. The party's goal is to defeat Kaiser Alcipiad, just like Rick. Seeing Rick fight on courage alone, even when he didn't have the power to win, gives her the confidence to say that Rick can grow stronger and fight alongside the S-rank party and become an adventurer. This is the first time anyone has supported Rick's dream of becoming an adventurer, and he's moved to tears by Rhea's faith in him. That brings us to the present, where Rick has just officially passed his E-rank exam. So for the first time in his life, he can say that he is an adventurer. The scene flips to Lynx trekking deep into the mountains, tripping out because he can't believe Rick lives out here. We jump back in time, and after passing the test, Rick hit up Lynx about it, and Lynx said they should grab that drink they promised to celebrate. Rick was down but wondered where they should kick it. Lynx wanted to chill at Rick's spot because he was curious about Rick's party scene. Rick pulled a face, looking like he just bit into a lemon, and told Lynx to wear his best gear if he wanted to roll through. Back in the now, Lynx is puzzled why Rick told him that, and the map Rick handed him leads straight to the Demon Lord's crib. Lynx is thinking maybe Rick played him with the directions, but he heads to the castle anyway. A bit shook, he hits the bell, and Rick comes to scoop him. Rick apologizes for dragging you out here, and Lynx is shocked there are no monsters around. Rick tells him they steer clear of this spot, and Lynx wonders what's up with the gear then. Rick says it's to make sure he makes it back in one piece, which has Lynx sweating a bit. They step into the castle, and Rhea welcomes them. Alycer shows up all hyped, and Lynx hopes his daughter can be that cheerful someday. Alycer casually drops some level 6 magic, and Rick blocks the spell from hitting Lynx. He warns Alycer to chill with the magic inside, and she fires back that it's his fault for not spending time with her lately. Lynx is bugging out, and Rhea tells Alycer she's gonna dock her meal for the damage. Alycer quickly says sorry, begging her not to cut her food. Rick tells Lynx he's got to hang with Alycer for a bit, or she'll wild out again, and Rhea leads Lynx to the guest room. Lynx thinks the castle's way too big and spots Mizette outside. He rolls up to him, curious about what Mizette's holding. Mizette clocks him as Rick's buddy and says he's into making RPGs as a hobby. We then see Lynx trying to fire the RPG with Mizette coaching him. Mizette tells him to gather his mana and pull the trigger. As soon as Lynx does, the recoil knocks him back, and he's floored by the damage the weapon does. Mizette thinks it's a solid model but needs less kickback. Lynx says this thing could change the whole game if it goes into mass production. Later, we see Lynx strolling through the castle hallways, thinking everyone here is pretty odd, and he spots an orc deep in some books in his study. Brufston spots him peeking and waves him in. Lynx is blown away by all the books stacked up in one place. Brufston tells him this is his crib and says being surrounded by books chills him out. Lynx thinks this dude is super smart and wonders if he's part of Rick's crew. He asks if Brufstons read all these books, and Brufston says he's read most of them, but he's been too busy training Rick lately to keep up with the new stuff. Lynx is shocked Brufston is the one training Rick, and Brufston asks if he's interested too. Lynx says he is and asks Brufston to train him as well. Brufston likes the fire in his eyes, reminding him of Rick, and agrees to train him. Later, Rick hears Brufston took Lynx to the woods and freaks out, thinking his friend's about to get wrecked. We then see Lynx falling off a cliff with weights on his legs, thinking he's a goner. But he lands on a monster, saving him. He sees Rhea carrying the dead monster, saying it's dinner for the night. Lynx thanks her for saving his life, and she realizes Brufston's behind this. Lynx explains Brufston told him to run down the cliff like it was a hill and pushed him. He says he would have died if it wasn't for Rhea, and Rhea agrees, saying Brufston's responsible for most of Rick's near-death experiences. Lynx pretends he didn't hear that, and Brufston asks if they should keep training, dragging him away. By evening, Lynx is totally wiped out, and Rick tells him he warned him about this. Lynx says Brufston promised to go easy, and Rick says to never trust those words. He got fooled by them too many times. Brufston laughs it off, saying even if the worst happened, he could just revive him, no problem. Rick wonders if people's lives mean anything to him. Alyssa asks Rick to let her play with the old man, but he refuses, knowing she'll turn him to dust. Mizette tells Rick it's his fault for bringing his friend here. He should have known it'd go down like this, and Rick thinks he's right. Later, Rhea serves tea to Rick and Lynx, then heads off to prepare dinner. Lynx says Rhea's an amazing woman and wonders how far Rick's gotten with her. Rick says it's not like that. She's not into him, he's just a boring guy in his 30s. Lynx tells him there's nothing wrong with that, then drops the bomb that his wife is actually 20 years younger. Rick is blown away, and Lynx says it's all about timing. If you got feelings for each other, it'll work out. Rick feels better hearing this, and then we cut to them having dinner. Lynx compliments Rhea's cooking, and Brufston and the others ask for seconds. Rhea goes to get more food, and Lynx tells Rick to go help her. He says showing some consideration can help Rick get closer to her. So Rick follows her. Lynx then asks the others about Rick's special skill and wants to see it. He finds out Rick's skill only kicks in during certain situations and can't be used at will. Lynx is still jealous Rick has a skill at all, and Brufston tells him that even without it, Rick is an S rank, but if he uses his skill called Reckless Soul, he can surpass them all. After dinner, Brufston asks Lynx if he knows about the magic crystals called the 6 Grand Orbs. Lynx remembers reading about them in the Legend of Yamato, thinking they were just fairy tale stuff, but realizes they must be real if these guys say so. Rick says their goal is to defeat Kaiser Alcipiat, and the 6 Grand Orbs are the key to opening the door to the dungeon called Spiral Origin, where Kaiser Alcipiat is. Mizette says the 6 Grand Orbs activate every 200 years, and they're at that cycle now. The orbs should be giving off strong mana, and Rick asks if Lynx has heard of anything like that. Lynx doesn't remember anything like that, but says he'll check with the secret intelligence that handles non-public quests. Brufston thanks him for that, and Rick asks Lynx if he has any more advice about Rhea, since he couldn't really help her in the kitchen because she's perfect at everything. The scene then cuts to an F-ranked adventurer named Lucas cleaning the guild, grumbling about her job since she signed up to fight monsters. She then sees Orc, small girl and old man trying to take a quest, but the guild master tells them they can't take it. Brufston doesn't get why they can't handle a difficulty 82 quest, and Lucas wonders why the guild master is bowing to them so much. Rick spots that this quest is for a squad of 4, so he tells the crew they can handle it if they recruit a temp member. Brufston hits up the guild master for some help, and the guild master goes to Lucas about it. He says it's a dope chance for her since she's been itching for a dangerous mission, and he basically drags her into the crew without letting her say a word. Lucas is tripping, wondering if she's really got to roll with the talking orc, and the guild master tells her to show some respect because these folks are top-notch adventurers. Lucas figures the orc must be the special one since the other two look like a washed-up old dude and a kid, acting all smug. She tells them she'll help out. They head to the quest spot, and on the way, Lucas asks what they're after. Rick breaks it down that they're hunting for some magic crystals, and a buddy of theirs mentioned there's one around here. Lucas wonders if it will sell for big bucks, and Rick says it will, but it's also risky to leave it alone because it can attract monsters. Lucas flexes, saying there's no need to worry, she can handle any monster that comes their way. She brags that she might be an F rank now, but she'll be a rank in no time. She asks Rick what rank he is, and he says he just made E rank the other day. Lucas thinks he's a late bloomer and hopes she doesn't end up like him. Then they spot the glow from the Grand Orb. Back at the castle, Rhea is hoping Rick and the squad are doing all right while she's cleaning the windows. Mizette is messing around with some gadget he made, sneaking a pipe under Rhea's skirt to blow air and sneak a peek at her goodies. Just as he's about to get a look, Rhea catches him. She asks what the device is, and he says it's just for blowing air without mana. Rhea finds it interesting and then slices it to pieces. The scene cuts back to Rick and the crew running into a wyvern. Brufston figures the crystal might be at the wyvern nest. Lucas is shook seeing the wyvern and hides, thinking this is bad news. She says one wyvern is trouble enough. but if its nest is close, it could call for backup. Brufston strolls up to the wyvern and with one punch sends it flying, saying that's his plan. Lucas is freaked out, warning him that the wyvern will call its friends. Brufston lays it out why he didn't off the wyvern, and Lucas is shaken. Then Brufston tells him she's getting on my nerves, and he gets Rick to bounce with her. Rick escorts her out of the woods, and Lucas be wondering why they never mentioned the wyvern brawl plan. Rick reminds her of how she claimed to be tough earlier, saying it's her game plan for the future. Out of nowhere, a dead wyvern comes hurtling at them, and Lucas is straight up stunned. Meanwhile, in the woods, Brufston and Elysir are straight up wrecking wyverns like they're nothing, and Lucas can't believe a wyvern got tossed their way like that. Then a red wyvern swoops in, but Rick swoops in to save Lucas. Lucas drops the knowledge that red wyverns are meant to be as tough as dragons. Rick, all cool and collected, steps to the wyvern, but Lucas warns him that as an E-ranker, he ain't got a chance against a dragon. Rick just tells her to dip, but seeing his determination, she agrees, saying Yamato wouldn't bail on his crew, and she ain't about to either. Rick's on board and asks for her backup, but he straight up obliterates the wyvern with one punch, not even letting her lend a hand. Rick then realizes he's got that power, and Lucas wonders why he even asked me to help or run. The next day, Lucas is back at the guild scrubbing floors, and the guild master props her for taking that quest yesterday. He peeps she's lost in thought and checks in. She spills that a lot went down yesterday, and the guild master knows when those folks are involved, things get wild. Lucas recalls after the wyvern job, Rick and crew bounced, taken a wyvern to cook up for dinner. She's tripping that you can munch on dragons, and the guild master schools her that these folks are S-rank beasts from the strongest squad worldwide. He hopes she's learned her lesson and will stick to quests on her level. But Lucas is set on becoming an S-ranker one day. She's starting with the E-rank test and dips to train. Later on, Rick and crew stumble on a grand orb called Red Flow, and Mizette feels the mana wave coming off it. Brufston figures they can track the other orbs by syncing them with mana, so Mizette uses his earth mapping mojo on the crystal, revealing a map showing the next crystals in Heratopia. Brufston breaks it down that Heratopia is known for its coliseum and love of combat sports, and we peep Angelina crushing foes in Heratopia's arena. About 400 years ago, when the land was just a desert and the country was small, King Alexander Heratopia Roman IV built a coliseum in the town of Knuckle Percy. They held serious tournaments there, and the king stepped into the ring with nothing but his bare fists. He racked up a winning streak of 10,000 fights, becoming the reigning champ. People from all over the continent came just to see him in action. The country quickly grew large and lively, and that's how Heratopia came into being. Now Rick, Brufston, and Rhea are walking through Heratopia, and they spot a statue of Alexander, also known as the Fist King. Brufston wishes he could have faced him, but Rick thinks it would have destroyed the whole country. Then Rhea explains that besides building this country, Alexander also made fist fights a big deal, and she's heard that being a martial artist is popular in Heratopia. They call themselves fighters. Brufston thinks the place is amazing but says they should stay focused. They try asking someone passing by about the grand orbs, but the person gets scared of Brufston and runs off. They realize they're not getting anywhere like this, so Rick suggests heading to the town hall to gather information. Brufston agrees, but before they can go, they notice a bald man trying to act tough and pick up a girl. It's clear she's not interested. Brufston steps in and tries to ask the bald man about the orbs, but the guy thinks Brufston is starting trouble. He starts talking big, saying he's not afraid of an orc and suggests settling it in the back alley. Brufston agrees. They head to the alley, and after a loud thud, Brufston drags out the beaten bald man. Then he asks if he can ask him something, and the man, now humbled, introduces himself as Gold. The girl introduces herself as Militia, and Rick shows them the grand orb they've got. Brufston asks if they've ever seen another crystal like it, and they both say it looks familiar. Militia says she's seen the orb a bunch of times, but she can't quite remember where. Brufston asks her to really think, saying the orb is special to them. When he says that, Militia blushes. Yeah, she's totally into him now, but before they can get any further, they get distracted by a parade announcing the Fist King tournament, which is just 2 months away. Baldy and Militia are hyped about it, so Rhea asks what the Fist King tournament is. Baldy breaks it down. It's a tournament where they crown the champ of all fighters. Militia adds that every year, about 500,000 people show up to watch it. They point out that the guy leading the parade is Kelvin Erwolf, who's won the tournament 5 times and is currently on a 3-year winning streak. Kelvin strikes a pose in front of the town, and Baldy is all starry-eyed, thinking he wants to be just like him. Even Brufston can feel that Kelvin's the real deal. Then, Militia notices something and seems surprised. Rick asks her what's up. She tells them to check out Kelvin's championship belt, and they all see that the orb they've been looking for is embedded in it. Rick's stunned, and after the parade, Kelvin heads into the gym. Inside, he meets his master, who apologizes for making him do the boring parade every year. But Kelvin doesn't mind. He says it's a fighter's job to make sure everyone enjoys the tournament. His master then checks in on him, and Kelvin admits he's not at his best. He mentions he'd feel better if there were a strong opponent waiting for him this time. That's when Rick and his crew walk in, and Kelvin is surprised to see them. They're thinking about talking to him, but the master tries to kick them out, thinking they're just Kelvin's fans. Rick clears it up, saying they're adventurers looking for a certain jewel. Brufston, not one for Rick's roundabout talk, straight up tells Kelvin to hand over his belt. Hearing that, Kelvin's master wonders if they're here to steal it, but Rick tries to explain the situation. Then, Brufston cuts in, saying they're actually after the jewel on that belt. He breaks it down, saying the jewel used to belong to one of their crew, and they've been searching for it for years. He then says he'll swap the jewel in the belt for something even more valuable, but the master isn't buying it and tells his guys to kick them out. Kelvin steps in, calming the owner down and saying he trusts Brufston. He explains his nose is special, and it's telling him to believe him, but he's not giving up the belt. He goes on, saying the belt means a lot to Heractopia, and even though Brufston only wants the jewel, he can't just hand it over. The only way to get it is to win the Fist King tournament. Brufston gets it and starts to leave, but Rick's wondering how they're going to snag that orb. Brufston says it's simple, they're going to join the tournament. After they leave, the master's shaking his head, thinking these guys were really rude and saying it's better to teach people like that while they're still young. Kelvin tells him that everyone in the room would be dead if they had tried to mess with them, and the master realizes these weren't ordinary folks. Kelvin confirms it, saying the dull-looking guy's body was trained to a ridiculous level, but he doesn't have that fire strong people usually have, so he couldn't figure him out. He adds that the maid was strong too. He could tell just by the way she carried herself. The master then asks about the orc, and Kelvin says he was a straight-up monster. Afterward, Brufston tells Rick and Rhea they're going to become fighters, win the tournament, and get that belt. He breaks it down, saying they need to pass the qualifiers in the east and west parts of the country first, then win a league with the other people who pass. After that, they can enter the main tournament. Brufston tells Rick to handle the west qualifiers while he takes care of the east. Rick's cool with it, but asks if Brufston's going to be okay on his own. Brufston says he's already arranged for a guide. That's when Baldy shows up with a fancy carriage to take Brufston, and the two of them head out together. The scene cuts to Rick on his way to take the fighter's test. Rhea explains that people from all over the continent show up to compete in this tournament. Rick thinks it's going to be interesting. He rolls up to the testing arena, and the examiner tells him the test is a mock battle against a newbie fighter. Rick asks if his opponent is strong, and the examiner says she seems to be since she's won all her qualifying matches so far. But he tells Rick not to stress since wins and losses don't count here. They're just judging his skills. Then Rick's opponent steps into the arena, bragging that folks in town call her Lightspeed. Rick thinks her voice sounds familiar, and then realizes it's Angelica. She's totally bummed to see Rick is her opponent. Meanwhile, we see this old guy in the crowd, one of Angelica's fans, cheering her on. Another guy named Nicholas rolls up next to him and says he didn't expect his buddy to be watching the mock battles. The old perv says he couldn't miss a chance to see Angelica in action. He's talking about how beautiful she is, except for her chest, which he says is flat as a board. He's confident her opponent doesn't stand a chance. Nicholas tells him not to sleep on the newbies, cause you never know when a dark horse might show up. Angelica then asks Rick what he's doing here, and he throws the question back at her. He also asks if her brothers are around, but he's relieved when she says they're not. She can't believe she's up against the old man who beat her brother Raster, who's a top-rank fighter. She thinks she can't afford to lose, even in a mock battle, even if the results don't count. The battle starts, and Angelica's sizing Rick up, thinking he still doesn't look strong from any angle. She decides not to make the same mistake as last time and goes all out from the jump, trying to use her blink step. But suddenly she trips and falls. She's confused, wondering if she just slipped up. So she tries again but ends up falling again. That's when it hits her this isn't just her messing up. Rick steps in and explains it's a new move he mastered a few months after the E-rank exam. He calls it one of his 8 holding back moves, the starting foot sweep. He says it's designed to mess with his opponent's will to fight by sweeping them endlessly. And it doesn't even hurt that much. Angelica can't believe he's treating her like a kid and is shocked that even as a second-class knight, she couldn't see him sweeping her foot. She thinks to herself that only this old man could pull off something like this. She tries to fight while keeping her distance, but it's no use. Rick sweeps her feet again. Angelica insists this won't take her down, and she keeps getting back up. but Rick just sweeps her feet every time. Rick's impressed that she hasn't lost the will to fight even after all this and decides to get serious. But Angelica freaks out when she hears that and quickly surrenders. Rick wins the match and passes the fighter's test. As Rick's heading out, Angelica confronts him, demanding to know what he's doing here. Before he can answer, she starts crying, wondering how many times he's going to humiliate her. Rick tries to calm her down, worried people might get the wrong idea, and offers to treat her to dinner. The scene cuts to them at the tavern, where Militia serves them some food. She mentions she'll hook them up with some extra since her parents run the place, and Rick thanks her for helping them find an inn. Militia seems disappointed when she hears Brufston isn't with them and finds out he's participating in the East League. Angelica then asks Rick again why he decided to become a fighter, and he casually explains that he wants to win the Fist King tournament. She's surprised he's talking about it so casually. Both Rick and Rhea dig into the food and think it's amazing. Rhea then asks Angelica when she became a fighter, and Angelica says it was 4 months ago, right after the E-rank test. Rhea's surprised that Angelica decided to be a fighter since she's a knight who uses swords. Angelica explains she has her own reasons for wanting to participate in the tournament. Rick tells her to hustle up, and she's wondering if he's really trying to get in on this year's tournament. When she finds out he is, she straight up tells him it's a no-go, even for him. She breaks it down getting into the first tournament isn't a walk in the park. They've got to win 40 league matches in 6 months just to qualify. Rick's not seeing the issue, but Angelica fills him in. The league fights are straight up brutal, and most fighters can only handle 10 matches in a month. Now Rick's sweating because he's already signed up for 40 fights in 4 days. She's shocked when she hears this. The scene cuts to Rick at the reception, where he's getting info on his qualifying match. They tell him to head over to Building B. He asks who he's up against, and it turns out it's some dude named Grit Albert. Word on the street is that Grit's been using illegal weapons, but they did a body check and came up empty. Then we see Rick facing off with Grit, and he can't spot any weapons on him. Grit sees Rick and figures he's some newbie who just stepped into the game. He's hyped to take him down, thinking Rick might have some serious reason for trying out this late. Grit pulls out an impact stone from a hidden compartment in his shoe and brags about how it can boost his punch power by a ton. The match kicks off, and Grit throws his jacket at Rick to blind him, then lands a full power punch using the stone. He thinks Rick's done for, but then notices his own hands busted up instead. Rick realizes Grit used an impact stone and explains that messing with those without proper training will just wreck your bones. Grit's confused, saying he shattered a boulder with that stone earlier, but Rick just tells him it's his turn to strike now. Grit starts freaking out as Rick unleashes his second hold-back technique, a swing and a miss punch. He explains this move can knock someone out cold just by rattling their brain with the shockwave, no serious injuries needed. Grit's out cold, and Nicholas is blown away. He's thinking someone serious just stepped onto the scene. The ref calls Rick the winner of the match. Meanwhile, in the Pleasure District, a guy links up with some weird creature named Jeeth and tells him it's time to get to work. Then we see the next match turns out to be between Angelica and a karate dude. As soon as the match kicks off, the karate kid tries to come at her with an axe kick, but Angelica's way too quick for him. She uses her blink step, dodges it with ease, and then lands a back kick that sends him flying into the wall. Boom. Match over, she's got this. After the fight, Rick's outside the arena, hyping her up for taking down all 40 opponents, which means she's in for the main tournament. But Angelica asks him if he's seriously planning to fight 40 people in 4 days, saying that's nearly impossible. Rick's all, what's so impossible about it? That's when she realizes this dude hasn't done any homework on this place. She tells him he can only fight 1 match per day in an arena, so to get in 10 matches, he'll have to hit up 10 different spots, and they're all mad far from each other. Rick's still laid back, saying the next arena's only 30 kilometers away, but his match is in 10 minutes, so he's gotta hustle. Angelica's trippin', saying there's no way he can make it there by carriage, but Rick looks at her as if she's out of her mind and shouts, "Why the hell would I use a carriage when I'm in a rush?" Then he just takes off, running so fast it even shocks Angelica, who's known for being lightning quick. Rhea asks if Angelica wants to catch the next match, and she nods absent-mindedly, saying it's not even possible. But Rhea's not hearing that she just grabs Angelica and starts rooftop hopping toward the next arena. By the time they get there, Rick's already done, having whooped his opponent. Angelica's left trembling from the wild ride. Rick barely has time to chat before he's off to the next spot, and Rhea's gotta scoop Angelica up again. Rick takes out the next guy with a shockwave and moves on to the next arena, where he just runs circles around his opponent until the dude knocks himself out. 4 days fly by, and Angelica's straight up stunned when she sees that Rick actually pulled off 40 wins in just 4 days. She's just glad he ain't in the same block as her. Otherwise, she'd be out in a flash. Rhea jumps in, saying Rick's not even the strongest in the tournament. There's Brufston too, who's an S-ranked adventurer and the one who trained Rick to get this far. Angelica gets it, she's got no shot against these beasts and asks, "Where'd Rick head off to today?" Rhea says Rick took off on a quick 600-kilometer jog to the next city. and Angelica's not even phased anymore as she sips her tea. Later that evening, Rick rolls back from his jog and gets stopped by this slithery lizard dude named Snape. He tells Rick he's the chairman of the West League committee and wanted to give Rick props for breaking the record by taking down so many guys in 4 days. Rick shakes his hand and instantly knows Snape's a warrior. Snape says he used to fight back in the day, won a small tournament at 23, and then hung up the gloves. Now, he's a merchant and an old friend of Angelica's family. He tells Rick to watch his back and say hi to Angelica before hopping into his carriage and rolling out. Rick's a bit thrown off as he heads into Melicia's restaurant. She looks worried and asks if something's up. She warns Rick to be careful because even though Snape comes off as a gentleman, word on the street is that he's got ties to the underworld and some shady gangster connections. Rick's left wondering why Snape came to see him in the first place when he overhears some dudes talking about a new dark elf bunny girl who's stealing everyone's heart. Rick instantly knows it's gotta be Rhea, so he rushes to the stadium where, sure enough, both Rhea and Angelica are dressed in bunny girl outfits, getting kids to gamble as if they were in a Jake Paul video. One of the rowdy customers starts getting loud and annoying, trying to clown Angelica. She's not in the mood for any of it, so she beats the crap out of him and steps on his head, daring anyone else to try her. Suddenly, Rick shows up and demands to know why Angelica is dressed like that and promoting betting and gambling. But he's left speechless when he spots the gorgeous dark Rhea looking like a total knockout. Back at the gym, Discount Nick Fury is reading a newspaper about some orc who won 40 matches in 2 days, using no more than 1 punch per fight. He's wondering what kind of beast they're dealing with when Kelvin tells him about Rick, who pulled off 40 wins in 4 days, which is also insane. This news really fires Kelvin up, and it takes Nick back to the day he found Kelvin in a shady town, running the streets in gang wars. He remembers finding Kelvin in the middle of beating down an entire gang and offering him a shot at a better life. He brought Kelvin back to this country so he could fight in the gladiatorial arenas and earn an honest living. The next morning, Rhea, Angelica, and Rick sit down for breakfast, and Rick mentions the Snape guy who claimed to know Angelica. But Angelica's stressed out just hearing that name and tells him she doesn't know anyone by that name. Later that day, the first main match kicks off between Angelica and Sam Sulek's sister. Rhea notices that Angelica's not herself today. She seems off. Angelica charges at the brute of a woman, but the woman blocks her kick and tries to counter. Luckily, Angelica's way faster and lands another kick, sending her opponent crashing into the wall and winning her first match. Next up is Rick's fight against some random fool who tries to hit him with wind magic. Rick easily slips past him and lands a karate chop that barely grazes the guy, but it's enough to knock him out cold, and the dude drops right into Rick's arms. The next few matches fly by as both Angelica and Rick breeze through their opponents without breaking a sweat. But by evening, Angelica's totally drained from all the fights. Rick tries to warn her about her final opponent for the day, but she cuts him off and heads back into the arena. This time, she's up against a massive, ugly beast of a guy, whose face alone could knock someone out. But Angelica holds her ground and immediately goes all out, using her blink step to close the gap, then jumping in the air and creating a water wall around him. The water wall closes in on the fatty, and Angelica hits him with an electric blast, trying to knock him out. But this dude's got thick skin and manages to tank it. Angelica doesn't let up, rushing in for another attack, but the fatty dodges her strikes and lands a massive punch, blasting her into the wall and ending the fight with a knockout. Later that night, she's getting patched up by the nurse, who tells her to take it easy. As she steps out of the infirmary, Rick's right there, asking why she fought like an idiot against a dude with solid defense. Angelica's acting off and tells him to mind his business, then walks off. But Rick doesn't let it go and finally gets her to spill. She reveals that Snape is her fiancé. When her parents died, her grandfather made a deal with Snape for a lot of money, basically selling Angelica to him against her will. Now that the engagement is set, her noble family can't break it without bringing shame to their name. That's why she's been trying to dig up dirt on Snape's shady business. She explains that Snape is a major sponsor of this tournament and has his own fighter in the mix, but Rick's not getting why that matters. Suddenly, they hear a commotion from a tavern. When they peek inside, they see a red lizard man choking a waitress. The fatty who beat Angelica tries to step in, but the lizard grabs him and slams him to the ground, knocking him out with one hit. Angelica's shocked, but she doesn't back down and steps in. The lizard dude goes to punch her, but Rick casually grabs his arm, telling him to chill. Right then, Snape shows up in the tavern and orders the lizard to stand down, saying he needs to save his strength for the tournament. Snape tells Rick that the lizard man is his younger brother, Jeeth, who's got anger issues but cools off fast. He promises to compensate the tavern owner and then leaves, while Angelica tells Rick she suspects Snape is involved in match fixing and is trying to make bank off his fighter. She admits she joined the tournament to take down Snape's fighter and expose his scheme, but now it seems nearly impossible. To her surprise, Rick looks at her and offers to train her for the upcoming matches, leaving her wondering if that's going to be enough at this point. Angelica finally agrees to the training, but before they start, Rick gives her a heads up. This training's gonna be so brutal, it doesn't even make sense. By now, Angelica's all in ready to do whatever it takes to get stronger, and Rick's feeling her vibe. So he slaps over 100 kilos of weight on her and warns her not to mess up her magic to boost her strength. If she does, she's done for. Angelica's curious and asks what kind of training this is supposed to be, but Rick isn't about to spill the details. Instead, he ties a rope to himself and takes off running. Angelica gets yanked along, already feeling like she's done for. Rick explains it's called baby bird running. Basically, you get dragged by someone faster, and your body either figures out how to move faster, or you're out for good. Rick points out that Angelica's got the acceleration down, but her other moves need work, so this should help tighten those up. She asks if they can at least take a quick break to get her mind right, but Rick tells her pushing past the limit is key. So they're going another 6 hours straight. By the end of it, Angelica's barely holding on and can't believe her feet are still attached. Even in her wrecked state, Rick gives her props for crushing it in her first session. Back when Rick had to do this with Rhea, he passed out almost immediately and got dragged across the ground. He died 3 times that day, but Angelica pulled through okay, so she's feeling good about surviving the training. But that was only the morning session. After an hour break, Rick's coming back to get her for the afternoon grind. Angelica can't believe what she's hearing and begs for a lighter schedule, but Rick's not hearing it. He's back in an hour, no ifs, ands, or buts. After 5 days of this nightmare training, Angelica finds herself in some random bar out in the middle of nowhere, trying to justify her actions. It's not like she's being lazy by running off. She needs training, but what Rick's putting her through is straight up torture, so it makes sense for her to dip out for the sake of her sanity. No way Rick's finding her way out here, at least. That's what she thought until she sees him standing outside the window. He says he's been hunting her down all over the kingdom. But Angelica still can't wrap her head around how he found her that fast. It's only been 15 minutes since she made her escape. She expects Rick to lay into her for ditching the training. But Rick isn't about to do that, he gets it. He knows what it feels like to want to run away. He's lost count of how many times he tried to bail when he was in training. Not to mention the thousands of times he ended up dead. This takes him back to a memory where Brufston accidentally killed him. Brufston asked Elicer for a little magic boost, and after she hooked him up, Brufston brought Rick back to life. With that extra magic Elicer gave him, Brufston mentioned he could probably bring Rick back another 2 times, and that got him eager to jump back into training. Angelica can't believe Rick pushed through all that, and Rick admits he definitely tried to quit more times than he can count. But Brufston hit him with some wisdom that changed everything. Brufston told him that the regret of giving up would be way worse than the pain he was dealing with. When Rick thought about it like that, he realized the path was clear. But Brufston also told him that if he ever truly wanted to quit, he could walk away. Knowing he had that option made the training easier to handle. Angelica then opens up to Rick, admitting she's always hated the whole noble lifestyle. She learned all the etiquette and manners, but never understood why anyone needs 3 different spoons for one meal. That's why she wants to make a real impact in her family. Not as some noblewoman, but as the first ever special grade female knight. She's ready to endure any amount of pain to make that happen. Rick's glad to hear it, so they head back outside to keep the training going. He's been mulling something over lately. Since Angelica's a knight, she'd naturally be better with a sword. But Angelica reminds Rick that the tournament rules only allow fighters to use their bodies in combat. Rick's aware, and that's why he suggests Angelica learn a technique that'll make her hand sharp as a blade. She didn't even know such a move was real. But this kind of thing isn't Rick's area of expertise, so he calls in Rhea to help train Angelica. By the time her next match rolls around, Angelica's looking dead inside from all the hardcore training with Rhea. Her fans have no clue what made her change so drastically. But when they see her opponent, a big, beefy dude, they know her usual strategy of rapid strikes isn't gonna cut it. But thanks to all those grueling hours of training, Angelica's come up with a new fighting style. This one's all about landing a single punch with so much force that the match ends on the spot. And that's exactly what happens. She smacks him so hard that she's declared the winner immediately, proving the training paid off. But it takes a lot to calm her down after that. Later on, Angelica's stressing over what went down because she can barely remember what she did in the match. But Rick tells her not to sweat it, she won the match and is now qualified for the tournament. Right then, Elicer and Mizette show up at the bar, and Rick greets them, asking if the lead they were chasing actually led to one of the jewels. Turns out, it was just a bogus rumor. So Mizette's been wasting his time. Mizette notices a cute girl nearby and tries to put the moves on her. But she's already got eyes for someone else, so she dodges him. A moment later, the guy she's crushing on shows up, and Gold announces Brufston's return. They all sit down to eat together, and Mizette asks what Brufston's been up to. Brufston tells him that he and Rick are entering the tournament to win and claim one of the jewels as their prize. Elicer says she wants to join in too, but Rick warns that it's going to be brutal. Brufston calls out to Angelica, having heard she's also in the tournament, and she confirms it. She even asked Rick and Rhea to train her, but they almost killed her with their methods. Rick tells her that the fact she didn't actually die shows she's got talent, But even with that, she's worried there isn't enough time for her to get strong enough to win. Brufston tells her to believe in her hard work because it always pays off. Finally, the day of the tournament arrives, and the match pairings are announced. Rick's relieved he won't have to face Brufston anytime soon because if he did, he'd bow out immediately. Angelica points out that the tournament brackets are clearly rigged to favor Jeeth. The way things are set up, Jeeth won't have to face Brufston or Kelvin until the final round. The setup probably went down like that because Brufston and Kelvin are serious problems for Jeeth if the plan is to rig the matches in his favor. Angelica figures Snape wants to hype up the crowd with Jeeth's fights against weaker opponents. Once the hype is built and folks start betting heavy on Jeeth, Snape's gonna place a bet against him, and Jeeth's gonna throw the match on purpose. To build up the right level of hype, Jeeth needs to look like he's barely breaking a sweat, which means his opponents can't be too tough. That's why Angelica wants to take him on early and wreck Jeeth's plan. Lucky for her, the way the tournament brackets are set up, her plan is lining up. But Rick wonders what she would have done if she couldn't face Jeeth until the finals. Truth is, she hadn't even thought about that. But it worked out anyway, so there's no point stressing over it now. Meanwhile, Jeeth's bored out of his mind, and as Brufston and Rick head to the stands, they bump into Kelvin and give him props for making it to the tournament. Brufston tells him he's gunning for that belt, and Kelvin's pumped for a real fight again. Back when Kelvin first got recruited, he was itching for a solid fight with strong opponents. The coach's gym wasn't all that popular at the time, but he had fighters who made it to the semifinals of the tournament. Kelvin was hyped when he got in the ring and asked if it was cool to take out this old man. But the coach reminded him that killing's off limits in the tournament. Weapons and armor were banned too, so all you could use were your fists. Kelvin was cool with that and told the coach not to hold it against him if he got hurt. But by the end of the fight, it was Kelvin who was messed up. The coach wasn't shocked that Kelvin couldn't take down Gonan, but he was impressed that for someone with no formal training, Kelvin was still pretty solid. The coach figured with the right training and guidance, Kelvin could become one of the best fighters in Heractopia. And he was right. Kelvin threw himself into training and got stronger with every loss until he finally stood as the champ of the Tournament of Fists. It's been 6 years since then, but Kelvin's still got that same fire in his eyes. Now the first round's about to kick off, and Jeeth's up against a dude named Herman. As the match starts, Jeeth's still bored, but Herman's ticked off that Jeeth isn't taking it seriously. So he tries to knock his jaw clean off, but his hit does absolutely nothing to Jeeth. Jeeth's getting irritated, so he tries to punch Herman, but he misses and hits the floor instead. The dust cloud from the hit is so huge that even Jeeth can't see a thing, and in the chaos, he accidentally knocks Herman clean out of the ring. Jeeth's definitely got power, and he's done what he needed to make everyone think he's unbeatable. But Rick thinks there's something off about him. Jeeth's got all that power, yet he still moves like he's never had any real training. The rest of the matches go as expected, with Angelica, Rick, and Brufston all taking their wins. Now, the final match of the day is between Kelvin and some random dude. Rick and Brufston are curious to see what Kelvin's got, so they're watching closely. As Kelvin's opponent tries to make a move, Kelvin drops him with a punch before the guy even finishes the motion. It's not that Kelvin's reaction time was super fast, it's more like he knew what was going to happen before it did. Kelvin's trained his nose to pick up on an opponent's impulses before they even strike, basically letting him smell into the future. But then, out of nowhere, Kelvin gets knocked down. Thing is, it didn't look like he couldn't react in time, he straight up let it happen. Kelvin took the hit on purpose, just to add some drama to the fight, but he gets right back up and ends it with a single punch. Next day, it's time for the semifinals, and Angelica's set to face off against Jeeth. She's ready to finally put all her hard work to the test. Snape comes over to Rick and asks if he can sit next to him. Rick's cool with it, but asks why Snape isn't sitting in his sponsor's seat. Snape says he wants to watch this match up close, since the people involved are his younger brother and his future bride. As Angelica's walking, she runs into Jeeth and tells him she's his opponent today. At first, Jeeth doesn't recognize her, but then it clicks she's the girl Snape's supposed to marry. Snape tells Jeeth not to mess up Angelica's face too bad, so they don't have to edit the wedding photos. Angelica smirks and says she's gonna show him what all her hard work has done. But Jeeth laughs it off, saying hard work's a waste of time. He hasn't trained a day in his life and is still stronger than Angelica. Nothing she does will ever change the fact that she's weak. A little while later, the match starts and Angelica goes on the attack. But Jeeth's shell is too tough for her kicks to make any impact. She backs off, ready to put her training to work. She starts circulating her mana through her body, and as she charges forward, she manages to land a small cut on Jeeth. She still has a shot at winning this. Snape is caught off guard because not even the sharpest blade could leave a mark on Jeeth's skin. Rick and Rhea are hip to what's going down though, because this is exactly what they schooled Angelica on. A quick flashback shows when Rhea broke down the technique for Angelica. It's called Thread Slash, but Angelica thought Rick was out of his mind for pushing her to learn it. Rhea laid it out plain it ain't impossible, since Rick figured it out. Rick could never get as sharp as Rhea, so Rhea told Angelica she needed to feel the breeze when she swings her arm. Angelica struggled with it, but she put in more work than she ever had. Eventually, she started mixing in her other skills and flipped the technique into her own flavor. It's a move that unleashes magic energy stored in the body in a quick and powerful blast. It puts a huge strain on the body, but the brutal training they put her through made it feel like a breeze. Angelica's flicker feed ability lets her use the technique in a way that's all her own. Jeeth gets ticked off when she pulls it off again, and he almost slices her in two. Snape is amused as the two keep scrapping, but Jeeth is done playing around. He sends Angelica crashing into a wall and tells Snape he can't help himself when facing an opponent with so much fight in them. Angelica refuses to back down, but Jeeth has seen her flicker ability enough times now to match her speed. He hits her hard this time and drags her for being nothing but average. Rick starts to worry about Angelica, but Snape is pleased that Rick's finally getting that Jeeth's strength is off the charts. Snape first met his adopted brother when Jeeth was 8 years old, and he used to beat Snape so bad he couldn't even stand. Turns out, Jeeth is the one who made Snape hang up his gloves. Jeeth's a natural, blessed with every gift needed for fighting. He's a beast. Jeeth is also a straight-up jerk, taunting Angelica non-stop. He calls her worthless and says that'll never change, no matter how much she trains. He even takes shots at her parents. Snape knows Angelica thinks he's setting Jeeth up to take an L, but Jeeth's crazy strong, and there's no need for that. Instead, Snape flipped the script. The chances of a sponsor slot competitor winning were slim to none. Everyone bet against Jeeth, so Snape took that underdog bet and laid down big money on Jeeth to come out on top. The crowd then watches in horror as Jeeth starts laying into Angelica. It's a brutal beatdown, and Rick realizes Angelica's hit her breaking point. Angelica believes Jeeth can't take her down, but Jeeth is dead set on seeing her crumble. He wants to show her that no amount of training will let trash like her beat a prodigy like him. Angelica doesn't want to regret anything she talked to Rick about, so she throws one last punch. It doesn't go too well, though, and it only fires Jeeth up more. Rick tries to call off the match, but it's too late. Jeeth's going in for the final blow. Lucky for Angelica, something makes Jeeth miss. Her life is spared, but Jeeth is declared the winner. Jeeth notices it was Rick who threw his shoe, but Rick's boiling with anger. Angelica gets taken away, and Rick meets Jeeth in the hallway. Jeeth is pissed about the interference, but he's caught off guard when Rick dodges his attack. Rick stays cool, telling Jeeth there's no need to rush because he plans to take him down in front of the whole crowd. Jeeth's livid, but he's on the same page. Rick goes on to win his next match, but Angelica's still in rough shape. Rick thinks about how hard she trained and feels for her. Brufston takes out his opponent with one strike, just like Rick, and Kelvin flexes his massive power too. That leaves 4 fighters, and the semifinals are set for the next day. Rick finishes up some training and finds Angelica has bounced back. He figures Brufston healed her, but warns her that any deep injuries might linger. She's clearly shaken, but Rick doesn't catch on until she opens up. She tells him she feels like she failed after all his training and apologizes for wasting his time. She wanted to prove she could stand on her own. Angelica starts convincing herself that marrying Snape wouldn't be so bad, but Rick snaps her out of it. He says he's the one who should be apologizing because he didn't realize how strong Jeeth really was until it was too late. Rick tells her straight up to watch his next match, so she can see what's beyond all that training she went through. The semifinals finally kick off, and Rick is set to go up against Jeeth. Rick's thrown off when Jeeth says he wants to apologize to Angelica, but then Jeeth reveals he's only sorry he didn't end her life. Now she's stuck living with the pain of knowing she doesn't measure up. The fight kicks off, and Jeeth starts running his mouth at Rick, but Rick shuts him up by smashing his face in. Rick's got the so-called prodigy down on his knees and tells him to quit looking so pitiful. Jeeth thinks Rick's getting too cocky, but Rick rocks him again. Angelica can't believe her eyes. Rick's punches are landing on Jeeth's iron body, but Rick's barely even tapped into his strength. Rick's only using controlled strikes. The power doesn't hit the surface. It digs deep inside. It doesn't matter how tough Jeeth's body is. When Rick hits with perfect timing, it's doing real damage. Rick gives Jeeth a shot to back down, but instead, Jeeth amps up with strengthening magic made for dragons, turning the match up a notch. This kind of magic eats up a lot of energy, but Jeeth's not sweating it. Snape explains that Jeeth's never had to train his magical reserves, he was born loaded with it. Rick, on the other hand, had to grind for everything he's got, so Jeeth mocks him, saying he should blame his parents. Rick's next hit gets stopped by Jeeth's iron body, and Angelica is stunned to see that Jeeth's managed to pick up the technique she was using. The crowd falls silent, and Jeeth assumes they've lost interest in watching a prodigy beat down an average guy. But Brufston sees it differently. He points out that Rick doesn't give a damn about the crowd. He only cares about how Angelica sees him. Rick blocks another hit and grins, seeing that Jeeth's finally starting to wear down. Jeeth's in shock because no matter how hard he swings, Rick's not even bleeding. Rick's got a special technique up his sleeve. It lets him spread out the hits inside his body, so he's barely taken any damage. Jeeth's ticked off because it's clear Rick's holding back. Rick breaks it down, explaining that he's toned down his physical abilities to match Angelica's level. Winning this fight isn't the only thing on his mind. He also wants to show Angelica what she's really capable of. Rick's turned this match into a kind of virtual rematch between Jeeth and Angelica. This sends Jeeth over the edge, but Rick tells him to chill out and plan his next move. Jeeth hardens his body for the next attack, but Rick shatters his armor like it's nothing. Rick points out that Jeeth's never had to push himself hard at anything, so feeling this exhausted is new to him. Snape refuses to believe Rick's got more power than Jeeth, but Rick's crew reminds him that Rick doesn't have much ability at all. Rick started training late, way after he should have built up his magic reserves, so technically, he's less than average. Snape can't wrap his head around how Rick is surpassing a prodigy like Jeeth, but Angelica's figured it out. Rick tells Jeeth that being this tired is throwing off his precision. Those who work hard push through the fatigue. They keep going until they literally can't anymore. The strength you've got left after you're completely drained, that's your true strength. The brain-dead lizard tries to keep swinging, but it's pointless. Rick says that real prodigies sharpen their skills by putting in the effort, and he's seen this with his friends. Jeeth always thought he was the strongest around, but in reality, he was only up against people he could beat. Jeeth snaps after hearing this and unleashes the greatest dragonoid strengthening magic. It practically turns him into a dragon, and Snape drops the bomb that Jeeth's tapping into the ancient blood of the dragons. Rick is caught off guard by his own power and can't believe it when his next punch does nothing to the beast. It's like Jeeth is made of metal, and his attacks are way faster. Jeeth really hit the jackpot being born with such a powerful body, so Rick figures he's not gonna win this one. Jeeth is glad Rick's finally realizing it. But what Rick really means is that someone at Angelica's current level can't take down a dragon. That doesn't mean Angelica should quit. She just needs to keep grinding for the next time she's gotta risk it all. Rick starts adding a few months of training here and there, slowly boosting his own power. He releases 12 months worth of training and becomes too fast to see. Angelica admits she's not at that level yet, but she notices Rick is using her flickering feet technique on a whole different level. It hits her that if she keeps up the brutal training for another year, this technique will be her strength. Rick takes control of the fight and starts dropping some knowledge. He breaks it down that regular hard work can't bridge the gap between natural abilities. It takes a certain craziness to keep pushing with extraordinary effort. It's true Angelica lost after training herself to death for a whole month. So Rick challenges her. Can she push herself to go through that same brutal training for a whole year if it means winning? Angelica reminds herself of what Rick said about the regret scale. Inspired, she declares she was born with a scale that only tips in one direction. Rick knocks Jeeth on his backside, and he wonders if the lizard has what it takes to push through this struggle. Sadly, Jeeth hasn't learned anything, so Rick decides to wrap up the fight. He uses the thread slash, but it's not as sharp as Angelica's. Even so, the attack still takes Jeeth down, and Rick tells him he's lucky he isn't facing the Angelica that'll exist in a year. After Rick takes down Jeeth, they wheel Jeeth out on a stretcher. Angelica thanks Rick for the win, but Rick brushes it off, saying he was just doing his thing in the ring. Angelica promises to reach his level in a year, and even surpass him one day. Rick's cool with it, telling her he's looking forward to seeing that, while the crowd goes wild for him. Angelica then spots Snape, looking real chill. Snape says he didn't expect things to go this way, but admits that deep down, he wanted Jeeth to lose. He explains that Jeeth's talent ended his fighting career, and though Jeeth lost a lot today, Snape's feeling alright about it. Elisa Red thinks it's too deep, and Mizette tells her that's just how grown folks are. Snape, on the other hand, says it's a shame he won't be able to marry her, and Angelica reminds him the deal's off now since he can't come up with the contract money. Snape walks off, saying he would have loved to have her as his wife, and that makes her heart skip a beat. Then we cut to Kelvin, who's about to hit the arena. His master asks how he's feeling. Kelvin says he's on top of the world, and his master tells him to go all out, reminding him he's the baddest in the game. Kelvin finds it a little odd, but he's ready to honor his master's words. The match with Brufston kicks off, and the crowd's hyped for Kelvin. The moment Kelvin lays eyes on Brufston, he knows dude's no joke. He starts swinging, throwing punch after punch, but Brufston doesn't even flinch. Brufston counters, but Kelvin dodges smoothly. Kelvin starts thinking this might be his toughest fight yet, but suddenly, Jeeth crashes the scene, going on a rampage, attacking the crowd. Snape wonders if Jeeth's dragon blood is making him go wild. Chaos breaks out as folks try to get away, and Kelvin's heated, calling Jeeth out for messing up his match. When Jeeth tries to take him down, Kelvin stops him cold with one hand and knocks him out with a single punch. Rick and his crew are stunned when they see what's happening, and Rick lets it be known that Jeeth is supposed to be as strong as an A-rank adventurer. Rhea jumps in, saying this might mean that Kelvin's leveled up to an S-ranker. And then the announcer hits everyone with the news they've got to push the match to tomorrow because of what just went down. Kelvin's not feeling it though, and Brufston clocks the frustration in Kelvin's clenched fists, which catches Kelvin off guard. Later, we catch Brufston and the gang grabbing some lunch. Brufston's heated about the delay, but Mizette tries to cool him down, telling him they're going to come out on top regardless. Then we switch to Rick, who's posted up near the border of the country. He spots a mountain breeze, and it makes him think of Rhea's curves. As he gets closer, he notices smoke drifting around the mountain. When he checks it out, he finds Kelvin training solo. Kelvin's not too thrilled to see Rick roll up. He was trying to keep it quiet and focus. Rick asks if Kelvin's pushing himself too hard with the match tomorrow, but Kelvin's just a bit on edge since the fight got pushed back, and he's itching to spar. They throw hands, Rick blocking Kelvin's strikes, but Kelvin's quick enough to dodge Rick's punch too. Rick's low-key shocked by how fast Kelvin is, and he's wondering how Kelvin took hits from way slower swings in the arena. He even jokes, asking if Kelvin had a cold or something, but Kelvin's got a different explanation. He starts breaking it down for Rick, saying he thought Rick might get it since he's strong too. He tells Rick he grew up in the slums, and scrapping was the only thing that gave him any real thrill. When he first hit Heractopia, things were smooth, and he took his first tournament with ease. After that, he won his second tournament without breaking a sweat. Nobody could touch him. Every fight ended in one hit. It wasn't bad as long as his master was happy. But soon the thrill of the fight was gone. The only thing that kept him going was training to get even stronger. Then one day, he overheard his master talking to someone from the tournament committee. Kelvin found out the arena's been losing hype because every fight ends in a single hit. His master asked if the staff was telling Kelvin to throw the matches on purpose. The staff member explained he wasn't asking for that, just that he needed the fights to be more entertaining. If the crowd keeps falling off, the whole gym's gonna feel the heat. The master said he'd handle it when the time came, but at the next tournament finals, Kelvin didn't want to mess things up for his master. So, he let his opponent land a punch and faked getting knocked out. He lost the tournament and the crowd went wild, so Kelvin thought, this works from then on. He figured out how to make his fights look exciting while still putting on a show, and he went on to win 3 more tournaments back to back. He breaks this all down to Rick, explaining that's why he can't go all out in his fights. Rick, taking it in, realizes being strong isn't always a win, but Kelvin shoots back that Rick's got no room to talk. Rick lets him know that tomorrow's fight won't leave any space for holding back. Kelvin isn't sure if Rick even heard him, but Rick bounces before he can say more. The next day, the rematch between Brufston and Kelvin kicks off. They've set up a barrier around the arena to keep the crowd safe. Kelvin opens strong, coming at Brufston with a flurry of punches, but Brufston's not fazed. Kelvin then hits him with an attack called Roll Fong, which forces Brufston to move his blocking hand, catching Rick off guard. Angelica breaks it down, saying Kelvin used a rotation technique to make his punch stronger. Kelvin keeps pressing, but Brufston dodges and counters, and Kelvin evades right back. Kelvin calls Brufston a beast, but Brufston claps back, saying Kelvin's fighting the same as yesterday. He hints that Kelvin's holding back, and Kelvin's thinking Rick must have spilled the beans. Turns out, Rick already told Brufston everything. The audience is clueless about what they're saying. Kelvin admits Brufston's got real strength, but if he goes all out now, everyone's gonna see that he's been faking it this whole time. Kelvin figures Brufston probably sees him as a fraud for tricking the audience, but Brufston turns it around, calling Kelvin a true pro for putting the crowd's excitement first. Brufston still feels it's a shame they can't go full strength against each other. To keep things fair, he decides to fight Kelvin using just 2 fingers and won't even move from his spot. Brufston thinks this will make things interesting, and Kelvin accepts the challenge. Kelvin throws a series of punches, but Brufston blocks every single one with just 2 fingers, even stopping the Roll Fong effortlessly. Brufston then throws Kelvin to the ground. When Brufston goes for another punch, Kelvin dodges, and now Kelvin's thinking this dude's a beast, but he's still holding back. Kelvin's master shouts from the stands, telling him he knows what Kelvin is up to. The master says Kelvin is misunderstanding things. Kelvin thought he was keeping things cool for his master, but the master reveals his real goal has always been to build the strongest fighter in the world. That's been his life's mission. He tells Kelvin to stop holding back and become the strongest, saying their goals align. That's when Kelvin decides to unleash everything. He's excited to finally go full strength, so he throws a punch at Brufston, but Brufston blocks it with all 5 fingers now. Kelvin says, "I thought you said 2 fingers." And Brufston responds that he's using the right amount of strength for the situation. Brufston continues to block as Kelvin goes all out, even managing to stop 2 Roll Fongs simultaneously. Brufston then blocks Kelvin's kick and throws him aside. Kelvin uses his steel body technique to absorb the hit, reducing the damage. The crowd starts to realize Kelvin's way stronger than they thought from his previous fights. They see he's been holding back and tricking them, and they're not pleased. Kelvin feels there's no going back now, so he decides to fully unleash his power. He casts a 5th nature fire spell, surprising Angelica because beastmen aren't supposed to be good at nature magic. Rick watches and realizes Kelvin must have trained hard to reach this level, recognizing him as a true genius, just like the rest of his squad. Even Kelvin's own master is shocked by his power, and Brufston uses some magic to throw up a chunk of earth to block the hit. Right after, Kelvin pulls a blink step mixed with a stalwart charge straight at Brufston, but Kelvin fakes him out with a punch and traps him using some wild 7th nature vine magic. Rick starts sweating, thinking this could end bad, but Kelvin ain't backing down. Kelvin busts out his 8th nature magic called Angel's Tear, calling down a whole meteor from the sky. The whole crowd loses it, they ain't never seen anything like that. Rick's sweating like crazy now, saying this champion is way stronger than they thought. He's worried Bruffston might not be able to hold back anymore. And for the first time ever, you see Kelvin getting hyped for a fight. Bruffston breaks free, counters the spell with straight up brute force, leaving Kelvin and the crowd dead silent. Bruffston decides he's done playing and goes all in. Rick peeps that Bruffston's throwing up a quarter thumbs up, and Rhea explains it's a pose orcs do when they're about to settle a score, meaning they're gonna throw hands without dodging or defending. Rick catches on Bruffston's about to go on the offensive. Bruffston charges at Kelvin, and Kelvin, for the first time, feels real fear just from the wind pressure of Bruffston's punch. It sends him flying back. Angelica's in disbelief, but she notices Rick's already checked out emotionally cause he knows how this match is gonna end. Bruffston charges Kelvin again, and Kelvin hits him with every kind of 7th nature magic he's got, but Bruffston doesn't even flinch. Rick sees Kelvin is running low on mana makes sense with all those big spells he's been tossing around. Then, Bruffston lands a punch on Kelvin, sending him flying back again. Angelica thinks it's a direct hit, but Rick sets her straight, explaining Kelvin used Flowing Impact, Blink Step, and some defensive magic to block most of it. Kelvin's struggling to stay on his feet, thinking that punch just rocked his bones and guts. Kelvin knows anyone else would have been dead from that hit. He knows it'd be easier to just quit right here, but he ain't built like that. He's been waiting for a fight like this his whole life, so he gets back up, ready for more. Kelvin throws a flurry of punches at Bruffston, but he's gassing out quick and drops to the ground again. He can't believe there's someone this strong in the world, and the crowd starts yelling for him to keep fighting. They're hyping him up, telling him to go all out, and Kelvin's shocked they're cheering for him after he tricked them. He figures he's gotta give it one more shot for them, so he pushes himself up again. His whole body catches fire, and Rick breaks it down. Kelvin just pulled off a blink step boosted with a stalwart fist, and now he's packing a flaming sword in his combo. Kelvin goes in on Bruffston with everything he's got, but Bruffston stands there and eats the hit like it's nothing. Bruffston looks at Kelvin and asks if he's done throwing everything he's got. Kelvin realizes his attack only pushed Bruffston back a few inches. He says he gave it all he had and admits this is the most fun he's ever had. Bruffston decides to return the favor with some respect and finishes the match with a solid punch to Kelvin's face. Kelvin's master thinks to himself that the road to being the strongest is still a long one, but there's no doubt Kelvin is the best fighter there's ever been. After Bruffston wins, he heads backstage, and Rick and Angelica are quick to show him some love. Now that Bruffston's heading to the finals, their crew is locked in to score the jewel, no matter how things go. Rick's already scheming to back out of the final fight because he's got no interest in catching Bruffston's fists. But Bruffston's hyped and tells Rick straight up, "You ain't bowing out of this one." With that, he bounces, and Rick immediately starts stressing, losing hair thinking about how he's got to square up against Bruffston. Meanwhile, Kelvin's patched up and reading about his fight in the paper. Some folks are heated, realizing Kelvin's been holding back as the champ all this time. He's thinking his days as the people's hero might be done. But judging by the kids outside still looking up to him, the owner's not worried about the public turning on Kelvin. What matters more is that he had no clue Kelvin had that kind of power, and neither did Kelvin. He was in the zone, cooked up that move on the fly. But at the end of it all, he still lost to Bruffston. The owner ain't tripping over the loss though. To him, it just means Kelvin's gotta grind harder to be ready for the next one. Kelvin appreciates the owner having his back, but he's curious why he's being so cool with him. The owner lets him know he sees Kelvin as a son and would go to bat for him any day. Right then, Bruffston rolls into the room, realizing he's stepping into a heartfelt moment. But he doesn't care. He's already there. He sits down, asks Kelvin how he's holding up. Kelvin straight up says most of his bones are broken, so Bruffston offers to heal him up. Kelvin turns him down, saying this is the first time in a minute he's felt pain like this, and he wants to soak it in. Rick had told Kelvin he wouldn't have to hold back against Bruffston, and now that Kelvin lost, he's hyped to see what goes down in the finals between Rick and Bruffston. At the same time, Snape pulls up to Rick's spot to check on him. He finds out Rick's holed up in his room, and Angelica's outside, trying to talk him out. Rick's not budging though, because he's convinced if he steps in that ring with Bruffston, it's game over for him. Snape gets why Rick's scared. But everybody's pumped to see this showdown, so Snape tells him it'd be cool if he came out and faced the music. Rick hits him back saying, "I'm not fighting, period. My life means more than giving the crowd a show." And if that's how Rick feels, there ain't much Snape can do to change his mind. But before dipping out, Snape switches to his showman voice, laying it on thick about all the effort and cash that went into making this tournament pop, and how it's all gonna go down the drain if Rick bails on the finals. As Snape walks off, Rick starts feeling real bad about letting everybody down. Angelica tries one last time, saying it's cool if he dies cause they can bring him back to life. And technically, she ain't wrong, but she has no idea how it feels to die, so she's got no right to push him into what's basically a death sentence. Rick snaps back, telling her she don't get how terrifying it is to face Brufston. Angelica finally stops trying to convince him, but she hits him with "I've lost respect for you as a teacher." When she walks out, Mizette steps in and asks Rick if he remembers how Brufston already had a training plan ready the day he joined their squad. Rick hadn't thought about it, but now that she mentions it, it was kinda weird. Mizette breaks it down, saying that plan wasn't random. Brufston cooked that up ages ago, designed to train someone to fight him on equal terms. See, in orc culture, fighting is how they connect with people. It's how they speak, through their fists. Problem is, Brufston's so strong, he can't have a real fight without killing the other guy. That's why he's dreaming about finally facing someone who's just as strong. Mizette reminds Rick that he's free to walk away if that's what he really wants. But she drops the hint that Brufston's been waiting on this moment. So it'd be cool if Rick could at least give him a solid fight. Rick flashes back to the day Rhea first introduced him to Brufston. Right after shaking Rick's hand, Brufston knew straight away that Rick didn't have any martial arts training and barely any mana. Rick was shocked that Brufston could pick up all that from just a handshake. But Brufston hit him with the truth. You ain't got what it takes to be an adventurer at your current strength. But that didn't mean it was impossible. He warned Rick that if he wanted to make it happen, he'd need to train over 100 times harder than anyone else to make up for what he's lacking. Back in the present, Angelica's still heated, calling Rick pathetic for being scared to go up against Brufston. Mizette's let down too, but he gets why Rick's dodging the fight. No sane person would willingly train with Brufston, much less throw hands with him. Angelica asks if Brufston's training was really that bad, and Mizette breaks it down, telling her it was pure hell for Rick. It's a straight-up miracle that Rick didn't lose his mind, though Mizette admits Rick did snap a couple times from all the pain. Angelica starts to see how rough Rick's journey has been getting worked to the bone in training without even having the skills to back it up. But then Elicer jumps in, dropping a bomb on her. Turns out Rick does have a skill, and that catches Angelica off guard since she's never seen him use one. Mizette clears it up, explaining that Rick's skill is tricky to activate. The conditions are wild, and it wrecks Rick's body when he uses it. So Brufston straight up banned him from pulling it out because Rick can't control it. Later that evening, Rhea swings by to check on Rick. He asks her straight up if she thinks he's pathetic for dodging the fight with Brufston. Rhea keeps it real with him, saying she doesn't think he's pathetic, and she gets why he's not feeling it. But she adds she'd respect him even more if he found the guts to face Brufston, even though he doesn't have to. The next day, the tournament is about to kick off, and the crowd's hype is through the roof. The announcer's out there listing all the prizes on the line for the winner: cash, precious gems, and even a couple's trip to a hot spring. Rhea and Angelica check in on Rick, asking if he's holding up. Rick says he's cool, but his face is telling a different story. He's still scared out of his mind. That's when Rhea steps up and tells him she'll personally hook him up with a reward if he does well against Brufston. From that moment, Rick's head is in the game. Rick steps out, ready to face Brufston, and tells him straight up he's giving it everything he's got. When the match kicks off, Rick charges at Brufston so fast that it's hard to even catch it. By the time it's over, Rick's managed to land a hit, leaving Brufston with a bleeding wound. Brufston's impressed, real impressed, but Snape? He couldn't even follow what just happened. Rhea breaks it down for Angelica, explaining that in that split second when Rick charged Brufston, he pulled off nearly a dozen attacks and blocks. Rick outmaneuvered him and landed a thread slash, slicing Brufston's arm. Not slowing down, Rick rushes in again. Moving at that same insane speed, he throws a punch, but Brufston blocks it. So Rick keeps throwing strikes until he's gotta pull back. But even then, Rick isn't done. He jumps off the arena walls, aiming to heel kick Brufston straight into the ground. Brufston blocks it again and tries to swing back, but Rick ducks under the punch, pulling off another thread slash, this time cutting into Brufston's stomach. Angelica, trained by Rick herself, knows how much effort and grind it takes to hit the level Rick and Brufston are on. But she's curious Rick was scared out of his mind a second ago, and now he's going all in. So she asks Rhea what she said to flip Rick's mindset so fast. Rhea smirks and tells her that she promised Rick they'd go on the couple's hot spring trip together if he wins. Apparently to Rick, that's more valuable than his life, so he's all in, doing whatever it takes to come out on top. Angelica's flustered, realizing a couple's trip means Rick and Rhea will be spending the night together, and Rhea's totally cool with it, which throws Angelica off, but she tries to keep her head in the match. Seeing Rick give it everything, Brufston decides to stop holding back and fight at full power. He pulls his arm back, ready to throw a punch so strong Rick has no choice but to leap out of the way. That one punch hits harder than level 5 magic, and Rick is reminded exactly why he was so terrified of facing Brufston. But there's no time to second guess. Now Brufston unleashes a flurry of punches at Rick, coming in all at once. Rick dodges as best he can, but while he's focused on the barrage, Brufston sneaks up behind him, ready to land a clean hit. Just before Brufston's fist connects, Rick activates his air cushion spell, redirecting the punch away from him. Now, it's already wild that Rick managed to block Brufston's punch with a level 1 spell. But what's even crazier is that Rick cast the spell instantly. No hesitation, no buildup of magic, no incantation, he did it on the spot. That's instant spellcasting, and even Bruffston's blown away, admitting that not even he can fully cast without an incantation like Rick just did. Rick admits he learned that instant spellcasting trick thanks to the grind with Elysir and Mizet. Elysir and Mizet back him up, saying Rick put in serious work to get there. He might have even accidentally gotten himself evaporated once trying to master it, but all worth it in the end. Then Rick makes his move, dashing straight at Bruffston again. Bruffston tries to stop him by creating a shockwave, but Rick's too slick with it. He just circles around and gets close enough to land a flowing strike. But Bruffston blocks it and counters with a punch that sends Rick flying backward. Even that's not enough to slow Rick down, though he rebounds off some rubble and charges right back at Bruffston, head on. Kelvin's watching and thinks Rick's wild for that move, since Bruffston's got plenty of time to counter now. As Bruffston throws a hurricane punch, Rick jumps into the air, dodging it clean, but being in the air leaves him wide open for the next hit. Bruffston throws another punch, but Rick uses his air cushion to shoot himself out of the way, then fires off an air shot at Bruffston. When the dust settles, though Bruffston's still standing there, barely scratched. Before the fight heats up again, Bruffston pauses to give Rick props. He acknowledges how much Rick has grown in the 2 years they've known each other. The training Bruffston put him through was tough, but Rick's strength and mental toughness are what got him through it. Bruffston says he's proud of him for that. And since Bruffston doesn't hand out empty compliments, Rick knows he means it. But Rick also recognizes that sounded more like something a master would say to his student, and Bruffston's really looking for someone who can fight on equal ground. Rick tells Bruffston that Mizet and Elysir filled him in on his dream to fight an equal opponent. Bruffston gets a little embarrassed but brushes it off, saying they're exaggerating. I'm all about a solid equal fight, but I ain't Trina hype it up like that. Even so, Rick wants to show his respect for all the dedication Bruffston poured into training him. So, Rick says he's going to give this fight everything he's got, out of respect, so Bruffston can have the fight he's always wanted. Bruffston smiles and says it's been a blessing meeting Rick. Since Rick's already part of their crew, Bruffston thinks it's time to share the history of the Orchicam fist with him. But before he can finish the speech, everyone is hit with a wave of shock. 46 years back, when Bruffston was just 5, he started to realize he wasn't like the other orcs around him. Not only was he stronger, but he was way smarter too, so he never really felt like he fit in with his people. To try and fix that, he started teaching them stuff like how to make fire or how to build houses. His hard work actually helped his orc clan step up their game. But then, his people started looking at him like he was some kind of god, which just left him even more alone, cause now he was on a whole different level. One day, during this crazy storm, Bruffston was away from his pack for a bit. While he was gone, a freak accident caused by the storm wiped out every single one of them. When Bruffston came back and saw what happened, he didn't even feel anything. Not because he couldn't save them, but because he just didn't care. His whole family was gone, and he felt nothing. That's when it hit him he was truly alone. Later, Bruffston was chilling by the fire, reading a book after killing a wyvern, when suddenly, this dude comes flying out of the bushes and tries to attack him. Bruffston dodged him easy, which caught the guy off guard, cause orcs usually aren't that quick. Then the guy notices Bruffston was reading a book and had just killed that wyvern, the one that was terrorizing the nearby village. Turns out, the man was on a mission to take out the orcs in the woods, but seeing how chill Bruffston was, he apologizes for the sneak attack. Bruffston says it's cool since humans always come at him like that. The guy thinks Bruffston's kind of fascinating, so he sits down to chat. After a long talk, the man learns all about Bruffston's life, especially how he struggles with being so isolated because of how strong and smart he is. What Bruffston wants more than anything is to fight someone as strong as him, but he knows that's probably never gonna happen. The man gets it, cause he's got a dream too that he hasn't been able to make real. Bruffston's curious, so the man tells him more. He says he once fought alongside a hero named Yamato, though these days Yamato's more of a legend. Bruffston had actually read about Yamato in a book before, but those stories supposedly happened 200 years ago. The man's hyped hearing that Bruffston read the book because he's the one who wrote it, and everything about Yamato's adventures and his crew is straight up facts. That means the dream the man was talking about earlier is all about taking down Kaiser Alcipiat, and that's a serious challenge. But it could get Bruffston closer to meeting someone as tough as him, so he's down to make defeating Kaiser his goal. With that, the two squad up to form the Orichalcum Fist crew, and over time, strong folks start joining up, just like Bruffston had hoped. Each new member had their own skills, but Bruffston was hunting for someone who could throw down in an old-school fistfight. Nobody could step up to that level. That's what made him come up with a training plan to get them there. But Mizet took one look and said, ain't nobody surviving that kind of grind. Bruffston saw Mizet wasn't wrong, so he let go of the dream of finding someone on his level. But right now, a dude who can match his strength is standing right in front of him, and that's got him all kinds of happy. Bruffston apologizes for holding up the fight with his long story, but Rick's thinking back to all the time spent training with him. Bruffston's always wanted that raw fist fight, but Rick's been out here using thread slashes and air shot magic. He remembers Bruffston telling him about the quarter thumbs up move among orcs, meaning you're dropping all your defense to just trade hits. Rick knows he's gonna regret it, but he puts his hand out and gives Brufston that quarter thumbs up. Brufston's stunned, and inside Rick's already saying sorry to himself and Rhea, knowing he ain't winning this fight. That means no hot spring time with Rhea, but she doesn't seem too worried. She's feeling the fact that Rick's ready to help Brufston reach his dream. Brufston gives the quarter thumbs up back, and they both throw full force punches at each other's faces. The hits are so wild they're breaking down the barrier around the arena, and it's bad news for everyone if that thing shatters. So Mizette turns to Elicer, asking her to hook him up with some of that magic she's got. Elicer's all in nods and agrees to give him a little boost while he works his spell. Once Mizette's done, the whole crowd in the arena gets zapped out of there, keeping them from getting caught up in the wild scene that's about to go down. But Mizette left Kelvin behind since the guy's tough enough to handle whatever comes next. Kelvin runs over, looking confused, and asks what's going on. Mizette tells him, "I sent everybody outside so Rick and Brufston can throw down without anyone getting hurt." Right after, the barrier around the arena breaks apart, and the force from Rick and Brufston's punches starts setting off these mini explosions. Rick might be landing more hits, but when it comes to raw power, Brufston's punches are way heavier, and it's starting to show. Rick's taking more of a beating than Brufston, and it ain't looking good. Rick gets in another hit, but Brufston fires right back, sending Rick flying. The hit's so hard, Rick flips midair and face plants into the ground. He's struggling to stand up, digging deep into memories of his training, refusing to let things end this way. With everything he's got, Rick charges at Brufston again, throwing a punch, and Brufston's ready with a punch of his own. The battle rages on. Both their punches land on each other's faces, and Brufston's getting a kick out of this now. He drives Rick into the wall, wrecking part of the stadium by accident. Rick's barely hanging on after that, looking like he's out of it, barely able to move, considering he went up against Brufston. Rick's thinking he did all right. He's ready to head home and rest, figuring Brufston's had enough. But then, he looks over and sees Brufston, who looks like he's not done yet. Rick's body's so beat up, he can only move a finger at this point. Angelica's shaking her head, saying there's no way Rick can keep going after taking all that. But the others, they're telling her to wait. They've seen Rick fight before, and they know he's got a lot left in him. For Brufston, it's all just a brawl, and Rick knows he ain't strong enough yet to call himself an equal. But that only fuels him to keep giving it everything he's got. Rick knows he owes Brufston some real respect. He balls up his fists, and suddenly a red aura wraps around his whole body as he taps into his natural skill. Brufston's straight up floored. He never thought Rick had it in him. Turns out, the rest of the crew had been keeping this under wraps. They'd secretly been training Rick, getting him prepped without Brufston knowing. Now Rick's got a handle on his power, and he's figured out what it takes to turn it on. The trick to unlocking it. Rick's gotta be ready to push beyond his limits against someone way stronger than him, and the energy fueling it. It's not magic or muscles, it's all willpower. From here on out, Rick is standing on equal ground with Brufston, and things are about to heat up. Rick charges forward, throwing a punch that's way stronger than anything he's landed before. Brufston throws another punch back, but this time Rick doesn't get knocked back. They're in it now, trading punches like equals. As they go at it, Brufston starts to see things differently. He used to think that fighting someone on his level would take away that feeling of being alone. But now he realizes he hasn't been alone for a minute. His friends, they've been by his side, putting in the work just to see him happy, and that hits him deep. The fight drags on, and both of them are running on fumes. They're worn out, and it's clear the next hit is going to settle this once and for all. They both dig deep, pull together everything they've got left, and charge at each other one last time head first. The impact sends shockwaves you can see for miles. When the dust finally settles around the arena, both Rick and Brufston are still standing. They're beat up and bloodied, but Rick manages to laugh and gives Brufston props, telling him he's a beast. Even after throwing every last bit of strength at him, Rick couldn't take him down. Rick drops to the ground, worn out, but Brufston's quick to tell him, "You didn't lose." The only reason the fight ended the way it did was because Rick stuck to Brufston's dream of a real, equal fist fight. If anyone should be called the winner, Brufston thinks it's Rick. Then not long after, Brufston hits the ground too, completely drained. A little while later, Rick wakes up in the hospital, and the champion's belt is resting on his chest. With Rhea sitting right next to him, he's been out cold for 3 days, and the crew was starting to worry if he'd ever wake up. But then again, last time he used his skill, he was knocked out for a whole week. So this time he's thinking that his training must have paid off. Rick's feeling relieved he's okay. But then he's confused about why he's got the champion's belt on him, especially since he remembers getting taken down before Brufston at the end of their fight. That should mean Brufston won, that's true. But Brufston tells him straight up that he thinks Rick's the real winner of that match and hands him the belt anyway. Rick's happy to get that respect from Brufston. But facts are facts. Brufston's like one of those bosses from Dark Souls, so he could have easily thrown a heal spell on himself and kept fighting with 2 more health bars. Rick held his own with just his fists, but deep down, he knows if Brufston had been using everything, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Brufston, though, tells Rick he's strong for real and thanks the others for helping train him. The crew all tries to play it off like they had nothing to do with it, but Brufston's not buying it. He knows they put in work for Rick. Rick, on the other hand, had no clue this was their plan, so he's a little shocked. Now that they've got what they came for, Brufston pulls the jewel out of the belt and tells Rhea to bring over the fake one she made to replace the real deal. Elicer steps in and charges up the fake jewel with some of her magic, making it harder to tell it's a knockoff. Angelica is just going to act like she didn't see a thing. Then Rick suddenly remembers something that's been bugging him. He asks Brufston about Reinhard, the guy from his flashback. If Reinhard's the same dude from the 2,000-year-old legend, Rick's curious how he's still alive after all this time. Brufston doesn't know exactly how old Reinhard is, but he explains that Reinhard's special ability keeps him from aging too much. It's been a couple years since Brufston last saw him, so Rick wonders if Reinhard's out there on some important mission. Turns out, the truth's way less epic. He's just dodging his publisher because he's late on his book deadline. Later that night, Snape pulls up on Kelvin to let him know that both Rick and Brufston turned down the chance to be the new champion. They gave the belt back, meaning Kelvin's next in line to take the title. But Kelvin not feeling it at all and doesn't like the idea of being champ again, especially not like this. The next morning, everybody's getting ready to head back home, and Rick went a little overboard packing too much food. They end up buying a carriage to haul it all. Elicer's feeling down cause Angelica's gotta leave, but Angelica promises she'll swing by for a visit, especially cause she wants Brufston to train her. Rick can't believe his ears when he hears Angelica talking about training with Brufston and straight up asks if she's got a death wish. But Angelica's already made peace with the fact that she might have to face death a few times to get stronger, and she's ready to do whatever's necessary. She's determined to catch up to Rick, maybe even outdo him one day, and Rick's hyped to see how powerful she's gonna get by the time they meet again. Angelica teases Rick, asking if he plans on running all the way home. He says yeah, even though it's almost 4,000 kilometers away, but Angelica ain't buying it. Rick tells her he ran there the first time, and it only took him 3 days. But Angelica points out all the stuff they bought will take months to make it back by horse, and the food's gonna rot by then. Elicer steps in and tells her not to worry with a little magic, it'll be fine. Then Mizette hits the horse with some steroids magic, and now that thing's moving faster than a rocket. With everything set, Rick's about to take off, but Rhea stops him, reminding him about the hot spring trip they were supposed to plan. Rick gets all flustered and says he didn't win the fight, so he can't accept that kinda reward, even though he'd love to. Mizette understands where Rick's coming from since his match with Brufston was basically a tie, so she throws out a new deal. They'll race back to the castle, and if Rick wins, he gets the hot spring date with Rhea, but if he loses, he's gotta do 100 times the training. Rick ain't feeling that deal and tries to talk them down to 10 times the training. But before he can finish, Mizette and Brufston are already taken off, and Rick's right behind them. He's determined to win so he can take Rhea to the hot spring, and Scar would like to visit them soon. Let us know if you want to roll with us. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed this recap, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or tweaks, share them in the comments. They help me improve.